Thank you. Roll call.
Director Davidson.
Here.
Director Ratterman.
Here.
Vice President Strange.
Here.
And Director Mills.
Present.
And President of the Village is absent.
Okay, good. I'd like to say one thing before public comment, and that is that today is Earth Day. It's your opportunity to kind of reflect on your own life and how your day-to-day decisions can influence the changing environment that we're all living in. I think that as we look at this drought and managing our water resources, it probably brings that closer to home than it has in a very, very, very long time. So celebrate Earth Day in however you might find it valuable. Thank you. Public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken by the board on matters not listed on the agenda, and the comments are limited to 5 minutes per person.
Good morning, George Fry. I'd just like to thank the manager, Dave, for being on Public Access TV last night and sharing information with folks in the county about what's going on with the water issues in Calaveras County. Thank you, Dave.
Any other public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Go to the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. Do we have any requests?
3B.
3B, the claim summary number 517, Secretarial Fund, in the amount of $1,283,233.89.
Move for acceptance of 3A and
Second.
3C.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda items 3A and 3C. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 4 directors to 1 absent. Would you like to speak of
3B, I just wanted it voted on separately. I did have a staff meeting regarding this summary. I did have a staff meeting regarding the summary, and there's still some unresolved issues with it, so I will not be voting in approval of the summary today.
I move for acceptance.
Second.
in the acceptance is for
To approve.
to approve 3B. Okay. So we've got a motion and a second to accept 3B. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against?
No.
No. And 1 no. So we have Director Davidson, Director Ratterman, Director Strange with ayes, and Director Mills, no. Okay, that will take us to reports. General Manager's report.
Yes, Mr. Chair, let me pull up, I have a PowerPoint I'd like to go through on the emergency regulations that are being pressed upon us.
Is our other screen down or?
Yeah, looks like we don't, well, while that's coming up, I'll just let you know a couple of things that we've gotten some information on, a couple of good news items before we get started on some of the really concerning things that are happening at the statewide level right now. We did get notice from the Joint Powers Insurance Authority, the Aqua JPIA, that are, there was a rate stabilization fund that was created a few years ago, and I'm by no means an expert on this, and Director Radman, you probably have a much better understanding of how this works, but it's for our their general liability programs and the workers' compensation program. And I guess this is to try to kind of soften the fluctuations in some of the actual claims, I guess, and the claims as the claims history develops over time. I'm not exactly sure, so that we don't see dramatic changes in our rates, is what I'm assuming. But what we received notice that we're receiving got a check in the amount of $54,999 in a refund from that pool. So fortunately, that's a savings that, thank you very much.
That's what you want?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
It's a, so that's a savings that we're realizing because of the fact that we didn't realize the cost that they had planned for under this reserve fund that they created. So it was nice to get that news and to put almost $55,000 in the bank. Certainly appreciated. I also want to note we did get we got a couple of really nice notes from the public, members of the public, on the good work that our staff has done in the utilities department. One, we Bill Purley and the utility crews in the Evans Pass area had done work on a fire hydrant in the area of 1725 Warhawk was the residence, and we received a very nice card for them thanking our staff for their great work and professionalism and assistance. And I just thought that was a really cool thing to see a card like this. It's a pretty rare thing for somebody to do that, and much appreciated. As well, I wanted to note we got an email from a customer who noted that Randy Shire, our one of the employees, had provided assistance to her after hours. She had a water issue after hours. He responded and provided her with some guidance on things that were actually on her side of the meter, potential water leak issues that she might have. She ultimately got a plumber to come in and address those issues, and it was exactly what Randy had suggested. And she just said she really appreciated how professional he was and treated her with respect, and it didn't make her feel basically dumb for making the request. So I really want to recognize them for that. That's much appreciated.
Dave, I think we got another letter from a resident in West Point, also a thank you letter for some of the hard work that Bill and his staff are doing up there. I forgot to bring that letter with me, but yeah, that's neat. I get a copy of that. Good job, guys.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that. They're good work. They're doing that all the time, and certainly we don't see them in the board meeting, and that's a good thing. I try to keep them out here as much as we can, including Bill, but that's what we expect. Is that the level of customer service we provide is as important as anything we do, and so this is something we want to take note of, is that when we're doing it right. I wanted to give the board an update. This is, certainly we've got a couple of really pressing things that are happening right now at a statewide level, and certainly the ongoing drought is really largely the reason that we're seeing these things develop. But one of the things that's happening right now, on April 1st, the governor declared a drought emergency. Declaration of drought emergency. As you recall, the governor had provided a declaration of drought emergency in 2014, in the spring of 2014. This is bizarre. For some reason, it's not coming up on the screen.
I don't know
what for next time.
happened last time.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So I'll turn your attention to this monitor over here.
Go ahead, Dave. Uh-oh.
Beautiful. Okay, well, I know this is my heart.
Okay, there it is,
It is now.
another synced.
It's synced.
Hey, Dave, it's, I know this can be stressful.
Yeah.
That's all right. Hang on.
Okay, thank you.
Look,
Well,
it's-
last time I tried to use this mic, I got the interference of the mic, so I feel like the podium is cursed with me. I don't know. But, so we got the emergency order from the governor. This was the second emergency order. One had been issued in 2014. The timing of this one, you'll notice April 1, that's when they measured the snowpack. It's supposed to be the height of the state snowpack. And the governor actually went out with the Frank Gerke from the Department of Water Resources, who does that, and had the press conference there at the Phillips Station up in the South Fork American River watershed up in, on the Highway 50 corridor, and had it there because there was no snow in the meadow. They normally would have 5 feet of snow on April 1. And so it was a pretty dramatic backdrop for this issuance of this drought emergency order because of the continuing drought. And the fact that really the biggest concern, not only because of the depleted storage that we have in our reservoirs right now, but the fact that as of that date, what was supposed to be the height of our snowpack, we were at 5% of average across the state, which is pretty scary to think about because, you know, that is the water storage that normally would flow into our reservoirs through this into the early midsummer and provide an awful lot of important water supply for our communities. So we can't count on that this year. So what came out of the drought order? And I know a lot of this is things that we've talked about before, but I think these are so critically important because what's happening now is we're seeing the much of what the governor did in this drought order is directed at the State Water Board and the actions that they're taking right now. And so to understand what was happening with that order and how it's being implemented is critically important for us for a number of different reasons, as we'll discuss. The drought order directed the State Water Board to impose the first ever mandatory water conservation requirements on potable water use. That's pretty extraordinary to think about. This is the first time the governor has ordered that happen on a mandatory basis. The prior request, of course, in 2014 was a call for voluntary conservation, and certainly we stepped up and responded to that, as did other agencies. But because of the deteriorating condition of our water resources statewide, that has now become a mandatory requirement. And it's the requirement is that on the aggregate statewide that we achieve a 25% reduction in water use through February 28, 2016. And this is the period of the governor's regulation or the governor's order and the regulations that the state board are adopting under that. The order is obviously in effect, but the state board's regulations will go in effect June 1 and then run through the end of certainly will run until at least February 28, 2016. Very well may be extended beyond that, but we know it'll at least go on that long. And the requirement is that, again, 25% aggregate statewide by that date. And the measure of that, I'll go into more detail on that, but the measure of 25% is against 2013. So basically, before the initial drought order and call for 20% conservation, using that as the benchmark. The governor's order has a number of different components to it, one of which is to prohibit irrigation with potable water, ornamental turf, and public streets and medians, and also requiring outdoor irrigation of new construction that it be done with drip irrigation or microsprays. As well, it also has, there's a really important component of the order that the state board is to take on. But in the state board, and I attended a meeting at Aqua with the deputy director of the State Water Board who is implementing, and her staff is drafting this regulation right now. And the highest priority for them right now is to, of course, come up with regulations on setting the conservation requirements for all agencies across the state. As soon as they finish that, they're going to launch into the next thing that the governor's order calls for, and that is a directive from the State Water Board requiring agencies across the state to implement fees and charges that promote conservation. We've got a new wrinkle now with a case that just came out the court earlier this week, the San Juan Capistrano case, and I'll discuss that a little bit more later, but that makes it less certain how exactly that's going to work. And one of my comments to the state board staff was the sooner you figure out the revenue side of the equation is going to be important for us, because in the requirements that they're determining now, those affect us immediately in our budget development, and so we're going to have to come up with a budget that includes that reduced revenue for conservation. And obviously that's not new to us, having already had 25% cut back to our budget last year. But as they try to ramp it up above and beyond that has real consequences to us, and we need to know what they're going to come up with on the revenue side.
So Dave, although it's a little bit off, again, focusing, this is all municipal stuff we're talking about now. We do have some agriculture use, very little, but we do have some ag accounts. What's the status, or what's coming down the pike as far as agriculture water, which is by far the lion's share of our use in the state?
And that's a really good question, Director Strange. And I know there's been a lot of attention paid to that because the vast majority of the state's water consumption is on the ag side. These regulations only apply to potable water. So for most of the ag across the state, they're not using potable water. They're either using raw deliveries of raw surface water or groundwater. We do have some ag customers who are using potable water, as well as we do have obviously commercial customers and industrial type customers that are using it as well. This regulation is really driven at the residential end of the equation, and primarily because they're and I understand it. Ag, particularly in the San Joaquin Valley and Sacramento Valley, there's already been an enormous hit to the productivity of agriculture, and with all the economic consequences and job losses and everything associated with that. With their lack of reliability of surface water delivered under the state and federal projects, they've taken an enormous hit. I mean, this year I think the delivery under the Central Valley project for South and Delta Ag is zero. So that's and of course that has resulted in a lot of the shift to use of groundwater, which in many areas is becoming unreliable or less reliable. So what this is really targeted at, though, is really that outdoor irrigation on the residential landscape. So what they really want to do is try to reach and impact ornamental irrigation, particularly turf. That's why you see the irrigation of turf in public medians as being deemed to be an unreasonable use of water and prohibited at this time. And so that's what this is geared towards. On the ag side, they are required to provide ongoing reporting under their ag water management plans that already is in place under law. And I would expect that there'll be further requirements placed upon agriculture as this develops as well on their requirements for efficiency. But right now, it really is a focus on residential, and of course, that's the lion's share of what we do, so that's immediately applicable to us.
It's the lion's share of what we do, but I mean, this is more of a symbolic gesture, and we're talking about water consumption or where water goes, because the environment. I mean, is there an opportunity for us to respond to the governor's order and ask him, what about the environmental release? I mean, that's the lion's share of water that goes through our river systems, and there doesn't seem to be a reduction at all in that. And I mean, we can, even if we meet this standard, which I think is going to be very, very difficult to do. There is no, there doesn't seem to be any response on the environmental release side. This is just a symbolic gesture statewide. I mean, I don't think this is going to really make a significant difference statewide in regards to overall water consumption, because I mean, it's consumptive use is such a small percentage of the state's water system. I mean, do we have an opportunity to respond to the governor and say that we think that perhaps ag and environmental releases, there should be a plan similar to the plan that they're asking our population to abide by?
I think that's a great point, Director Davidson, and that's really consistent with the resolution that the board adopted recently, is saying that when you're tightening the restrictions on what is deemed to be a reasonable use of water during this time of prolonged drought, it has to apply to all uses of water, including the environmental uses as well. I would say I think those changes are happening to tighten up and limit some of the releases that are for water quality and environmental purposes. We've seen that on the Stanislaw with the operation of New Melones and its effect on Tulloch. Within the last couple of weeks, there's been a resolution agreement reached between the Tri-Dams agencies and Reclamation and the Fisheries Agency, which was accepted by the state board, allowing for reduction in those releases to preserve some of the storage at Melones, which would then be allowed to preserve some of the storage at Tulloch as well and provide for other uses of it. That agreement only goes through the end of this water year, September, but there are things happening. I know that's also happening on the Sacramento River as well. They just announced a similar type agreement.
Well, is there an opportunity for us to object to the 32% and say, we think we should fall under the 25%? Do we have that opportunity, or is it just it's a done deal and we can't do anything about it?
Well, we can, and I'll walk you through the steps on that. There is an opportunity to comment, but But being that the State Water Board is under the order of the governor to reach an aggregate of 25%, and they estimate that's about a 1.4 million acre feet savings across the state to achieve that 25%. If we simply say we think, and believe me, a lot of agencies have said this, we don't think this is equitable, we don't think the disproportionate impacts to inland areas that have, warmer areas with higher evapotranspiration rates and different land use patterns, we don't think this is equitable, and they've said, we simply don't have, we can't ignore the governor's order, and that's just not going to fly. So you're seeing that a lot of the lower end of the tier are those areas, coastal areas that, because of climate conditions primarily, they're in a different situation than us. But again, their primary target for the state board is trying to change outdoor irrigation, particularly in the
I think it's a social engineering thing. Nobody wants to make an investment in our water infrastructure. So what do? You force reduced consumption. It's the same thing they did with the power grid. When we used to have blackouts, then the next thing, a couple years later, now everybody has to use a certain type of light bulb to reduce our energy consumption because they didn't want to make an investment in the infrastructure, and that's the same thing they're doing now. I certainly want to get on board with the conservation effort, but it just frustrates me that we're the culprits here by complying with this rule, and I just at least want to make some sort of a statement that says, look, what we need is an investment in our infrastructure. That's what we need, and we can eliminate some of these drastic measures. That's what's going to help. Re-engineering people's lives is not the answer, I don't believe.
That's a good point, and we try to put this in the context that conservation is one of the things, but there are a host of other things that have to be done for us to provide for our reliability, for our communities, for the environment, for everything else. We simply can't sit on what we've done in the past, particularly in the way of what we've invested in infrastructure-wise, and think that that's going to continue to provide all of our needs. But just to give you an overview of the process, so the proposed regulatory framework came out on the 7th of this month. The comment period, this is a very, very tight timeline. This is not a traditional rulemaking process that would go through the Office of Administrative Law, where you'd have longer comment periods and hearing process. This is on an emergency basis, so things come out, there's a very quick turnaround, and the regulation itself is ultimately probably going to be adopted on May 5th or 6th. That's what they're saying now. I'm sure there's going to be a full house at the hearing and maybe pushed out some amount of days, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them take action by the 6th. The regulatory framework came out on the 7th, the comment period due by the 13th. We submitted comments on that, many agencies across the state did as well. The draft regulation came out last Friday after incorporated some of what the comments that were received on the framework. Really, the development of what happened between the framework and the draft regulation, that's something that obviously is a big concern for us because the initial proposed regulation, here I'll go right into it right now. The initial proposed regulation provided four tiers for determining what your water conservation requirement would be. This is all based on residential gallons per capita per day, so this is residential water use, potable water. And it's based on what we reported, the agencies reported in September of 2014. That was the initial proposal. And so with that, we came in at a range, I believe we were 161.5 on our reported GPCE in September 2014. So we fell in the standard of 25%. Again, that went from 10% to 35, and we were at 25.
Can I just make a quick comment? I just think imagine what that would look like if it was acres per gallon per day.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is we have bigger lots. We have more acres per population than many counties, and there's maybe a handful that are different, but they're going per capita as opposed to per acre, and I just think that would be an interesting comparison. Because I think we're being dubbed as a water waster, but many of our residents have gardens and small orchards or vineyards and things of that, and it's just really going to impact their quality of life, and I think that's not necessarily what we should be trying to do.
So, okay, so and as we move to the draft regulation, it came out and made changes based on the comments received. And there was the reaction to the 4-tier water agencies, primarily from those agencies that were in the 35% tier, was that it was inequitable because you had some agencies that might be at the top of one tier. You've got another agency that is in the bottom of the next tier, and there's only a fractional difference in their water use, and yet they're hit with an additional 10% requirement from 25 to 35. The state board tried to address that by taking the 4 tiers and actually turning it into 9, and also took the measurement period from 1 month, September 2014, to instead an average of the monthly use between July and September of 2014. Unfortunately, that was didn't help us because our usage for those prior months was higher than September, and so our average went up to 180.4. Also, just to note on the draft regulation, it provides that water suppliers with less than 3,000 connections, so those that under law aren't deemed to be an urban water supplier, but obviously do provide an urban water supply, we have many of those in our county, will be required to do 25% conservation or a 2 days a week limitation on outdoor irrigation. Again, this is as they clearly say, this is all targeted primarily at limiting outdoor ornamental irrigation.
Dave, stay with that point for just a second. If you think about outdoor watering twice a week, you really run into how is that enforceable? You know, you got voluntary and you got enforceable. And at some point, there's got to be an agreement between the state and the various water agencies as to what level of enforcement are you going to put on everybody to get this done, what you want done. And if you're talking $10,000 a day fines for not meeting the goals, so to speak, are they going to give us the enforcement power necessary? I mean, does the City of Angels deputize their municipal workers so that they know that they're doing 2 days a week on every lot? You know, it becomes almost insane as to what it would take to make this work if they don't put the mechanism in place that we can enforce it.
And then that's a great question, Director Mills, and that's one that we've been thinking of. And Joel and I have talked at length about this, and actually our council has been looking at it for us as well. What authorities do we have under existing law to try to enforce this? I mean, right now we're basically sending letters where we're notifying we're not complying with our stage 3 requirements, and if it elevates to a level where they're not responsive, we would have the ability to go to basically law enforcement and say, this is, I mean, it under existing law could rise to the level of a misdemeanor, and we could ask for their support in enforcing the law. And as I understand it, Matt, feel free to weigh in anything, we already have the authority under law, and this wouldn't require any additional action by the legislature or the governor, to implement fines for violation of our water conservation requirements if the board so decides to put those in place. We don't have those in place right now. What we've been discussing is for us to get to the level of 32% that you'll see that we're now under, and to meet the requirements on enforcement, which the state has put out there saying you must show you demonstrably have real tangible meaningful efforts to enforce the rules. That's probably something we're going to be bringing to the board to consider, a series of warnings and then fines associated with non-compliance with our conservation policy. The one thing that we can look to, there are a number of agencies that have already taken that on, have already done that. I know in the Sacramento area, that's one that they've been doing for the last year. So there are other examples that we can look at, and so we won't be off doing this, recreating the wheel on this one. I mean, there is other practice that we can look to and try to implement things that are working in other areas of the state.
Dave, I'd like to speak to the bulk sales that we do as well, and we talked about that, is that you have one connection which may be serving, 300, 400 people, and yet it's counted as one connection and one person in terms of gallons used. So that's skewing our numbers where most municipal agencies don't have that problem. So maybe we need to go back to the state and say, we're going to revise how we report this out based upon not just that single connection, but the total number of people served divided by gallons of water manufactured.
That's a great point. And you're referring to our policy on municipal water companies, and that is how we've accounted for it. Well, actually, I believe the way we've accounted for it is based on the meter size. We have a multiple So if they have a 2-inch meter that we're wholesaling water to them from, it has a factor basically treated as though it's 8 customers. Clearly, we've got areas, that are serving much more than that, and so, and this is the time we have to go back and review all of that and make sure that, if we have any opportunity to make changes in that way that help us in meeting our compliance and account for the reality of how we deliver our water, we're going to have to do that and analyze those, which is already underway right now. So I think what I'm going to propose is, as soon as the state board takes its action, which again I expect it's going to be done by the 6th, that's what they continue to say, we're going to come back to the board at the earliest opportunity, no later than the meeting on the 13th. Possibly we could, I would think the 13th would be the earliest opportunity. We've got to digest what they have and be prepared to present that to you. But at that time, we're going to look to provide a suite of recommendations for changes to our existing Stage 3 requirements so that we can position ourselves to meet the requirements for 32%, if that in fact is what is ultimately required, and to address these other things that we're talking about. So Joel's going to speak to some of those things in a moment on the ideas that we're contemplating right now. So what we ended up with 9 tiers. The first tier is reserved. There's an exception to the rule that applies to areas that basically have adequate storage and have had normal precipitation. And they're allowed to apply for a 4% conservation standard. None of those have been identified yet, so you're seeing a 0. The rest, the additional 8 tiers, basically they took the 4 and they expanded it to additional, multiplied it by 2 to try to create more of that, again, that equity that people were calling for. There was even one suggestion that instead of having tiers, they have an ascending straight line so that basically you compute your water use against that line, and each agency would have its own standards so that it would be dialed in specifically, and there wouldn't be these ranges with those that fall into the bottom and the top of the ranges and create some inequity. Unfortunately, again, probably the biggest change for us was that the fact that they now calculate it based on the summer months, the period of June through September, and so we ended up, July through September, and we ended up with a water use percentage of 180.5, and so we ended up in our GPCD of 180.5, and we ended up in that 8 category with 65 other agencies at 32%.
Do we have numbers that talk about the annual consumption? Statewide as a because that's an interesting point you bring up. If they're gonna talk about this during the summer months, it gives an advantage to the urban areas that have more level water usage. I mean, we don't have a level water usage, primarily because of our lot size and our climate. So it really skews it to the disadvantage of areas in the warmer climate with the rural areas.
Yeah, no doubt. This is definitely the effects of this are weighted on areas like our community, and they want to do it immediately so that they can achieve the water savings. The regulation goes through February, but they recognize that the greatest opportunity for savings, given the formula they've come up with, is during the summer months. So that's why they're so anxious to get this regulation in place before June 1 and kick it in during the summer months.
But again, it frustrates me so much, because if you also want to talk about the population of these areas, it's just not going to do anything.
And the financial resources, that's a challenge as well.
Well, and the financial burden on the smaller utility agencies like us is going to be staggering. And we just don't have the economic resources to make up for this. Where urban areas with hundreds of thousands of customers, they've got a much bigger base to draw from to survive this.
That's where the Mountain Counties Association, I think, as a whole, has to come together and represent all of us, mountain counties. And,
this is no secret, but some of these small utility agencies are going to fail because of this. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind if you're going to take 25% out of the 20 or so smaller agencies than us, if you're going to take 25% or 32% of their revenue, they are going to fail.
They don't have the reserves.
No, they don't have any reserves.
That's a scary proposition, because all of the all of this that the state wants to accomplish has to be implemented at a local level. I mean, it's the reality of how our system operates. And that's what I said to the state board members was, you've got to address the revenue impacts of what you're proposing as quickly as possible, because we have to develop budgets right now. There will be real consequences as a result of what you're coming out with. If you sit back and wait until sometime in the summer to come out with a proposal on how we're supposed to make up for some of those costs, that's not going to be much help to us.
Yeah.
And speaking of mountain counties, John Kingsbury has already responded to this and got a letter in, and it is this is kind of ridiculous. I mean, with there's two big things: the climate difference between the Bay Area and here. It's not the need of water, the density of those populations in the entire Bay Area. Any larger urban areas, it's way skewed, and the fact that and Director Davidson points out our lots are bigger, and the requirements for the environment it's a much warmer climate.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to and this is gonna hurt.
Let's not even go into the whole water rights thing.
Yeah,
The fact that we actually have water rights that we should be able to enjoy is just
Well,
frustrating.
and that's a great point, because this was language was added to the new regulation, making it abundantly clear that the requirements that are set by the board under this regulation, if you exceed that, you will be deemed to be wasting and using water unreasonably under the Constitution. And that goes right to the heart of every water right in the state, no matter its priority, that applies to it. And so, if you don't make a good faith effort, and probably more than that, if you don't actually achieve it, you put yourself at great risk of having your water rights called out in front of the state. So,
This is obviously important. Why don't we try to maybe hold comments at this point until Joel's going to speak too.
Okay, and on the compliance assessment, so the way this works, we've continued to do monthly reporting ever since this was required last year by the State Water Board. September 2014 was the first report that was filed under those requirements. We'll continue to do that. One of the order says that that's now going to become a requirement for water agencies. And so the tracking our compliance is going to be on a monthly basis over the summer. To month-to-month to 2013, and how we're meeting our target on a month-to-month basis. And as well, they're going to look at it on a running average, tracking that over the time period. So probably the most important thing will be that by 28/16, we have met the cumulative requirement. I mean, that's going to be the one. And that's what we heard, was that those agencies that don't, there'll be very serious consequences because of that. And the consequences for noncompliance, the state board has indicated that they will use informational orders to require submission of additional information, so that if you report things that they disagree with, or that they have questions about, or need more information, there will be orders that come out, consequences for noncompliance up to $500 a day, fine for that. Then beyond that, in the way of actual enforcement of the requirements itself, they will issue conservation orders that could require additional actions to enforce compliance with the conservation requirements and prevent, again, the waste and unreasonable use of water. So they're going back to that constitutional prohibition against waste and unreasonable use, and their authority under that. And the consequences for that could be up to $10,000 a day for failure to comply with a cease and desist order. The next steps for us, we'll continue to submit comments. John Mills will be here shortly for our presentation on the Headwaters framework policy of Aqua. He has been our liaison to the state, to a number of state officials and the State Water Board through this process, and is working on comments that we will submit. We have a real shot at getting an exception to the general 32% requirement for the areas of our county that actually have water stored in upstream reservoirs that would provide for multiple years of supply, that we can point to and say we should be given some flexibility because of that. We should be in those areas served, and this would likely apply to us in the Stanislaus watershed with storage at New Spicer. Would we have the ability to show that we do have storage up there? We believe that we're going to be able to have access to that storage over the next 3 years, for example, and then have that as the ability to ask for a reduction in the requirements for conservation.
Wouldn't that also be true of Rancho? I mean, of Hogan?
Good point. Very good point. Yeah, I mean, although Those are primarily raw water deliveries, but we do have
No,
some.
I mean, we pull our water out of Hogan for La Quintana and Rancho, for that area.
Yeah,
I mean-
that's a great point. We had primarily looked at Spicer, but I think this is a really good point. We should also include that.
Larry's like, well, I've always understood that we own the bottom of that lake, or, that's our water supply, but, I mean, I guess everything's in question right now, but I certainly think we want to, put it up the flagpole and try.
And as you'll see, I mean, at the minimum, we would hope to be able to drop back to the next tier, at least for those areas served. So we might be able to at least get some of our areas down to a 28% requirement as opposed to 32. I know this is, we're basically, it's not satisfactory to be able to get that limited amount of relief, but we're trying to get everything we can because obviously every percentage goes straight to our budget. Let's see, as well, we'll come back with the agenda item. I discussed that with a number of different things to consider, including changes to our stage 3 requirements to meet the requirements of the regulation and be ready for June 1. And as well, we're analyzing right now what other things should we do in the way of declaration of a drought emergency under the Water Code or potentially under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, to be able to provide us with the flexibility to respond very quickly to what's happening, including at Tulloch. We've been monitoring that for some time. We haven't needed to do that till now, but I think that this may be a time, given what happens with the regulation, that we want to do that. And again, we'll continue to budget for and implement more robust conservation efforts. Not only the reduction in revenue, but there will certainly be costs associated with expanding our program to meet the requirements. And that's all. Joel, if you want to give us an update quickly. Joel is, of course, administers our conservation program and has done a lot recently to try to put us in position to really have an expanded effort, and so he's going to go through that with you.
While he's setting up, there's something to just bring up how quickly things can change. If you go to the Silver Pinion in Winnemucca, Nevada, they in the last 30 days, the state of Nevada has stated to Humboldt and Pershing counties, there will be no more water wells drilled. Zero. And they're actually saying to the ag users, by June 1, you will have meters on your wells, and you will be reporting every 30 days. Failing to report will result in a sheriff's visit. And that's ag users only at this point. So I'm just saying, if this can happen in free and loose Nevada, how quickly could it come to California as it's become serious? Because you know that in domestic use, there's a lot of these people have private wells around Calaveras County. Don't think they're not going to take advantage of those wells, so they're going to pull from aquifer whether we want them to or not, or the governor wants them to or not. So there's a reality here that has to be coming into play. What you're talking about, environment, people are going to find ways around it.
Some dang sage grouse is our problem over there. We need to just eliminate them.
Greener lawn, so I think what's that, three-legged frog or yellow-legged frog?
Three-legged frog.
Well, one of the things that was really most dramatic in the governor's orders, there actually is a provision that says that there will be financial assistance provided to residents who lose their private water supply, so on wells lose their supply, and don't have a reasonable alternative that they can turn to actually physically relocate them to another area. That's pretty amazing.
There's 1,100 dry wells in Porterville right now.
Wow.
And St. Iglesias Church has got a shower set up in the parking lot to help families to get by. So Tulare and over that way towards the east is in a massively worse situation than we are.
I'd like
Dennis,
to
we've
have
got-
each of us talk about, at the end of Joel's presentation, about addressing this issue, because I think we all have a lot of concerns and recommendations possibly.
Go, Joel.
Good morning, Vice President Strange and members of the board. I'm going to give you a brief presentation and update on our conservation efforts and what we're looking to do to meet the state requirement. And just looking at this picture, this was taken just this last weekend. That's standing below Parrots Ferry Bridge. And I think Maloney's is one of the most visible examples of drought in the county, and it just continues to drop. If you go to our Facebook page, there's a video that shows even more and really brings it into perspective. So I want to let you know what we did in June 2014 was Stage 3 mandatory conservation, and this is a detailed list. I'm not going to go through each point, but this is what we're currently operating under. We never took this out of commission. This is what's been going all the way through the winter. And this is what allowed us to achieve an 18.4% reduction in 2014. And what I think is really amazing is 18.4% puts us in the top 10% of the state water reporting agencies when it comes to actual amount percentage reduced. Unfortunately, the state is looking at GPCD, and that does not give us the credit for what we reduced. As Jeff, you said, we have big loss, we have loss of water use. So even though we reduced it significantly, we're still pretty high in terms of the statewide numbers. So this is what we're operating under now. And our enforcement actions, as Dave said, are verbal warnings. We've done a lot of those. If it gets to the point where they're ignoring the verbals, we'll send them a letter, and then another letter that gives them a warning about the misdemeanor. We haven't done any flow restricting devices, but we do have the opportunity to do that. And then finally, we can push it over to the DA and ask them to pursue a criminal misdemeanor, which could come with a $600 fine and also 30 days in jail.
So is there currently, there's a state law that would, we don't have to come up with some municipal law to have that enforcement. They would be in violation of a state law?
Water code. Right, so,
California Water Code.
No, our ordinance provides this.
We have it in our ordinance.
right. But it's based on,
The water.
so this is not something we've pursued either, but this is something that we can do. My concern is the DA is already understaffed as it is, and to get a bunch of these complaints, I just don't know how effective that would be to actually have them take that through the process. But that is one of our options.
Joel, before you leave that slide, the verbal warnings that we're doing right now, have we got any written warnings out?
Yes,
What kind of violations are those? What are we seeing?
This is for any violation of stage 3. So if someone is seen by a staff member or a member of the public washing down a sidewalk or watering during the restricted watering hours or on the wrong day, we really partner with our public mainly for this. They call it in. I try to investigate it to make sure it's a legitimate complaint, and then either give them a call or have a field staff member stop by. And then if we have another report, because I track what every address has been reported, and I say, oh, this is the second or third time, that will lead to those letters, which get a little bit more serious as we go along.
Thanks.
But we don't currently have the opportunity to issue fines, and that would be the clear next step in order to have the public take us seriously with these restrictions.
And Matt, you talked about what our ordinance says. Do we have an ordinance? What exactly does our ordinance state?
It provides what the various stages are, and then it provides for violation stages we can do, and it comes straight out of the water code, which is issue warnings, issue flow restricted device, or seek prosecution.
Okay.
It's a $600 fine.
One last question. Where would any fines go, i.e. who is a recipient of that financial or monetary benefit?
$600 fine would come to us, but I don't think we've ever done that.
No, we
It goes through the court.
not in my time here. I've heard that we may have pursued this, but I would have to do some more research to see whether that was actually successful. I do know that many water agencies, any kind of fines doesn't go into the general fund. It goes into a separate fund, which is not used for the day-to-day operation, and that's important legally. But I'm working with Matt to really make sure that we do this right and put thought into it. And this is something we'll bring back to you in May to evaluate. So moving on, public outreach was a main component of the stage 3, and so what I and my team and board members and everyone work to do, and I don't know what's going on with our projector here.
Like a slideshow.
We reached out with bill inserts. We had flyers and messages on every bill about conservation. My staff up front, anyone who came in, they were very personable and very educational and informational with everyone who came in. Also over the phone, that's our main contact with our customers. I made sure that they mentioned stage 3. And then we did road signs and flyers, website, social media, press releases, radio interviews, television, and then tried to get as many community meetings as we could and mention what's going on with the conservation effort and what's being required of us by the state. So we've actually really done a big public outreach effort, and honestly, I think it's been very successful, but we have to do more. We have to step it up, we have to ramp it up, and that's what we're going to be talking about at the next board meeting. Some other things that we've done, this is the Water Conservation Rebate Program. We're giving money for toilets, up to 2 toilets, 25 each, high-efficiency clothes washers, smart irrigation controllers, and irrigation efficiency upgrades. So these have been available for about 6 months or more now. And people are taking advantage of those.
We have a cap on, what did we put,
No
10,000?
more than 150 per person, so they can kind of.
No, I know, but we have a budget for that.
Yes,
And
we
how is
do.
it, how is our budget?
We've spent our budget down by about $6,000 since the beginning of these programs.
And what did we have in it, 10,000?
No, we started with 15 and then we got up to 30, so we're down in, around 24,000, 23,000 right now. So we do have the resources to really expand this program that are already approved, and that's really puts us in a good position. This has been our most popular conservation program. People like free stuff. All of these are provided to our customers only for free. Thanks to Terry for suggesting that we expand it from just the headquarters to satellite locations to make it easier for people to get these. And so we have dye tablets, which show you if you have a toilet leak. Faucet aerators reduce the flow. Shower timers, 5 minutes. We're encouraging people to take shorter showers. Low flow shower heads reduce the shower flow. The hose timers have been the most popular. People still water a lot of trees by hose, and so that will turn it off automatically. I know that I've forgotten to hose many times, so that's a really big one. And then the moisture meters tell you when you should or shouldn't water your landscaping.
And Joel, point out where those satellite offices or satellite locations are.
So the first one was up in West Point at West Point Hardware, West Point Lumber, and then we have one down at Senders Market down in Valley Springs. And then we have one over in Copperopolis at Lake Tulloch Hardware. And then finally the hardware store up in Arnold was the last one that we implemented. And thank you to all of the directors for helping me work with the hardware store owners to implement these. I've resupplied most of these folks with 2 new shipments. The Arnold one only has gotten 1 so far. So these are just the numbers, just so you know how many supplies we've actually distributed to our customers. And this is not the cheapest thing in the world, but this is a really good use of money. I think it's important that we show our customers that we're taking this seriously and we're helping them conserve to meet the goals that we are asking them to meet. So what have we achieved? In 2014, as I said, the calendar year, 18.4% was our reduction. And then if you just look from June to the end of the year, which is when we had our stage 3 in place, we reduced by 20%. We are now being compared against 2013. So when I report to the state each month, that's what we're looking at. In January, we dropped by 21% when compared to 2013, not last year. In February by 12, and in March by 15. This is still good, but this shows us how much work we have to do because this is not anywhere close to that 32% number. So as we move forward here, we're going to have to really get our customers on board with the importance of this and give them the tools they need to up their water conservation significantly. We're not even close to where we need to be right now. So we have a big task ahead. So what are we doing? Here's what we have done. We're in the process right now of developing a new website, which will be launched in June. That's going to be a very, very good tool. I want that to be pretty much the main outreach tool that everything else feeds off of. And then also we're implementing Paymentus, which you approved recently. That is going to give us more outbound communication capabilities such as text message, email, e-bills, and also if we want to send a phone message out, we can do that with Paymentus at an affordable rate.
Go
ahead.
When you're talking about the phone messages, in regards to, because the one thing that also we haven't talked about is staff time. Our staff is busy doing other things besides policing and then going to people's doors. Do we have the technology to, if somebody has, if a complaint is witnessed, can we take their address and then do a phone call warning?
We absolutely
or a text warning, or
we absolutely could do that. Not under our current system. We couldn't tell a computer to call them with a pre-recorded. Under Paymentus, we could do that. We have more versatility. Right now, it's been if it comes in from the field, generally me or one of my team members will call and say, we got an anonymous report. We would never name any names.
Well, I think that it's going to be one of my biggest fears is that the public is going to turn on each other. They're going to be mad at the person next to them that has a pool or a lawn or anything, and it's going to be. And I'm really concerned about the discord with neighbors and the anger and stuff that's going to come out of this thing. And I believe that a lot of reporting is going to begin to come in as we get into the summer months. And I just think that if we have to make it, if it's a reasonable investment so we're not having staff. Because, you can't make 30, 40 phone calls a day and still do your regular job. So if there's an automated way that we can at least do some of this thing, I think we need to try to provide for that.
I think that's an excellent point, and I will look into that because, to your point, my team wasn't doing conservation or anything close to this just a year ago, and it's been a huge time suck for me and my staff, and it's very important that we're doing it and doing it gladly, but it definitely does add one more thing to the already full plate. So in addition to the paymentus, we have the native plant demonstration garden. We already have some native plants here, but we're going to expand that and finish the landscaping all with natives. We're then going to turn that into a self-guided tour that tells what plants there are out there and how much water they take, and that should be a great tool, not just for our customers, but for the whole county to come and see. And then I'm very excited about Calaveras Conserve. This is an effort that is a county-wide effort. No one is taking the lead on this. This is everyone working together, which is really cool. This is every major water purveyor in the county coming together to make some signs, which are going to go up throughout the county. Also have a booth at the Calaveras County Fair where we all come together and give water conservation information. And then we also have a website which is just about done with development. So anyone can go to calaverasconserves.com once that launches, and they can find the water conservation information that applies to them. Currently, there's a lot of confusion between where people live and who's regulating them, and none of us have the same regulations, unfortunately. So this landing pad website is going to be key to getting everyone the information they need, and that's also going to have the statewide information, not just the local information. And then the final thing is we could probably seek grant funding as a group. I think the state would look very favorably on every water purveyor in the county coming together and going after common goals. This is what the sign is most likely going to look like. There might be some tweaks. The county of Calaveras is going to hopefully join us officially on the 28th. We're on the agenda for that. But we're hoping to have everyone's logo up here, a simple message, and then push them to the website.
Are we seeking additional partners in that group?
I'm open to anyone who wants to get on board. It's a very open group. We want to work together and collaborate.
Okay, good.
The most key members are the water purveyors in my mind, and those are the ones who have joined, and then the county as a whole. But if anyone else wants to join, just have them contact me, and we can get going.
Is there any effort to talk to HOAs or have homeowners associations be part of this? I think that's might provide a useful tool, as much as I'm not necessarily a big fan of HOAs sometimes, but they do seem like they might be. An example is, there's been a bunch of talk on social media about Gold Creek. Gold Creek still has a requirement that you have to keep your lawn green. It would be nice to at least invite the HOAs to one of these meetings or something to educate them on the reality of what has to happen and see if we can enact some change there.
Well, to that point, we have the HOAs, a number of them involved with the Highway 4 Committee right now. And they're the large ones in the county. So I'm glad to see that they're at least caring and someone involved in what we're doing, and bringing them into this group might be helpful as well. I agree.
Absolutely. I'll look into that. I do currently keep in contact with the HOAs with regard to our conservation restrictions, and also the landscape companies, because they're often the ones who are setting those timers. So I'm trying to reach people who have responsibility for larger areas in order to make my time more effective. So that's a great idea. So these are some potential conservation program expansions. Now, again, these are not put in place at this point. These are things that we're considering doing and that we'd like to do. But I just want to make sure this is still proposed, so people can't call and get these right now. So the indoor and outdoor water use audits, turf removal program, more education in schools can be very effective. An application for a smartphone where someone could take a picture and have that sent to us, and then Jeff potentially automatically have a phone call go out to them. That might be a way to take the staff time out of it.
Well, I really don't want to be in the neighbor versus neighbor business. I don't want to be encouraging that. I really don't. I think that's going to cause chaos.
Yeah, so there's an app like this in San Diego that has been really successful. We would need to look at that carefully, and no, we don't want to start fights or have people get contentious with trying to sneak into their neighbor's yard and catch them with the sprinkler on at the wrong time. But we also need to know about this, and we do not have enough staff to properly enforce this without partnering. So these are the things that we're going to think through carefully and then bring a recommendation, and we'd like your feedback on.
Well, maybe that's how we enact the HOAs. Because for the most part, this is a turf grass issue,
Right.
primarily, and it would be nice to allow the different communities figure out how to police themselves and help us. I think that that would go a lot farther than asking neighbors to, walk up and down the street and rat each other out.
Point taken. We'd also like to add additional demonstration gardens such as xeriscape and rock only, maybe cactus gardens to give examples. For now, we're going to get pictures up on our new website that go through all of those different options. We can't get those gardens in place right away. And then we'd like to have presentations at community events. That's something I'd like to do more personally and maybe have help from board members and other staff. And then maybe radio and print advertising as well. We might also modify stage 3. In fact, I'm sure that we're going to. Here are a few of our recommendations. The state is really asking everyone to go from whatever they have to 2 days per week mandatory. We're currently at 3. We'd like to consider maybe going to 2 days for ornamentals. We may be able to make exceptions for gardens, orchards, and things that really do need more water than that 2 days a week and wouldn't make sense. We don't want to completely ruin people's quality of life. But for the most part, if it's ornamental, it probably should be 2. Also discontinue any deliveries of potable water to golf courses and reduce raw water deliveries by 50%. Now, most of our golf courses are using a lot of recycled water, but some are using raw water and some are using potable water. Actually, one golf course is. So we need to make sure that golf courses, which are a huge user, are using water wisely as well.
I also think it's important to on the positive side, is to talk about the percentage of our recycled use in this county. I mean, people, that's one of the big arguments I hear people saying, why is the golf course green and my lawn is not? And we need to showcase the fact that it's actually a very big benefit to our sewer customers that they are using, and I believe it's 100% of our recycled water. I mean,
Right, yeah,
correct me
just
if I'm
about.
wrong.
Let's go ahead and finish up, Joel, and then we'll have a chance for all of us to comment.
And then, this is already a state
Still gonna
regulation,
comment
but I'd
to
like
it,
to
so.
make it really clear in our regulation about what cars. The state's asking for that shut-off nozzle. We've really been asking people not to wash cars at all, but I want to make that very clear because that's also a big use of water. And then some additional measures is to create a policy that gives Ccwd the authority to issue fines, and that's what Matt's and Dave have been talking about. We're going to look at that closely and bring that back to you. And then some other ideas are making adjustments to the amount of water included with the base rate. It's currently 1,000 cubic feet for your average residential customer is included in that 113.56 for 2 months. It's about 7,500 gallons of water. If we reduce that included amount of water, that would encourage conservation. And then we also have a tiered rate structure above the 1,000. We do have an emergency tiered rate structure, which is different in our draft contingency plan. I'd like to look at that and maybe bring back a different tiered rate structure. But with that ruling from the court, we may have some challenges with tiered rate structures. And then finally, a drought surcharge has been done by some districts. If you lose enough revenue, you have to make up for it somewhere. So these are all options that aren't exactly ideal, but they're things that we need to consider. And that's all I have today, but if you have any questions, I know we have another presentation coming up here with John Mills, but I'll take some questions.
I do have a comment on, we were talking about our golf courses, and I know at least 3 of them are using tertiary water. That's not going to happen. I mean, that's not going to be available, I don't think, all summer long. By the end of the summer, those resources might, or most likely will be used up, and if they are used up, they're going to be going to some other water, most likely raw water or potable water, whatever is available. We should also be conserving our tertiary water and contacting those customers that are using those resources. For example, La Contenta. And once that tertiary water, and I think it's going to be, it's every year, July, August, that most likely is going to be drying up and going away, and they are using all of it now, from what I understand. But just be one more reaching out, and because they're going to be using that other water, which is going to go hard against us if it does get to that.
That's an interesting.
Any other comments, Scott, on that?
On what?
What I'd like to do is go to each director. And,
I hope that works out for you, but sometimes I'm going to comment on what another director will say. But I agree, that's an interesting point, and I don't know if we just have a conversation with our recycled water consumers and just say, look, there's a chance you may not get the raw water, and let them self-impose their reduction in tertiary water consumption, or if it's more important to mandate that they do it, because it is their own business, And I mean, I just think we need to explain to them the risk that at the end of the year, we may be under a different restriction that will prohibit you from watering your golf course at all. So I don't know which of those two conversations.
And I want to be absolutely clear, we understand that there are real consequences to those that we're asking to make cutbacks above and beyond what's already been made, and there are economic considerations here for our entire community. So we want to work with people, and I don't want to create a sense of panic by anybody that we're going to disproportionately be impacting a certain industry like the golf courses. We want to get ahead of this as quickly as we can, but we realize that there's going to be ratcheted up requirements. They're going to be felt throughout the community, but I think you're exactly right. We need to get the information to them. We need to start working together and try to provide as much flexibility. And the sooner we do that, certainly as Director Rademan said, we may have options if we can do things now. So I've heard that, and we're definitely going to take up that idea.
Anything else, Scott?
I'm good. Thanks.
Jeff?
That was your last chance.
No.
I just have a couple further comments. I know I've been rattling on. I think that we really need to wrap our head around the public involvement. I mean, I think that there's certainly a resource, but I really want to try to direct things toward HOAs as opposed to roving water warriors type thing. I just don't want to have, I think that, people are going to get in fights. They're going to have all kinds of chaos this summer. And I just want to really be thoughtful and try to have some dialogue with homeowner associations and ask them how they will self-police and see. I even hate using the police word. I hate that we're going to have to be policing, but regardless. And then the other thing I think that we need, anytime we put out a publication, I think it's very important that we put Governor Brown and the state board's name at the head of this, because these are not our restrictions. These are state mandated restrictions, and we are just complying with the state order. And I think it's very important that people know, because at the end of this, after hopefully we'll start to get normal rain years, I want people to realize that we need an investment in infrastructure, and the state is the impediment to that, or right now. And so I don't want it to be Ccwd's restrictions. We're following state orders, and I think it's important that we use that as at the beginning of all of our publications in regards to this.
That's a good point. Director Mills.
Thank you. If we look at this drought now 4 years, and we're talking about what we're going to do this year, we're still being quite reactionary to what the governor wants or what the environment is giving us in terms of water. What about next year? What about the year beyond that? I mean, how far is this going to go before we start thinking and trying to get in front of it? I've said for a long time that the state and the federal government, as well as us, we need to have FEMA drought maps just like we have FEMA flood maps. And that land use planning and agricultural production and where we site people all has to be based upon the impact that we're creating here. And so that's getting in front of it. But, to another point, are we using all of our treated wastewater? I would challenge the staff to take a look at the size of the pond at Douglas Flat, because I know you've done a tour there, and so have I. And I'd like to find a way for us to use that water financially and any other way to the benefit of the residents that surround it, and not just throw it up in the air and try to get rid of it through a spray field, but eliminate the spray field in essence, and don't try to increase the size of the pond, increase the size of the use of it, of the water coming from the pond. It's great water. It's probably some of the best that the county has. So I'd like to see us find a way to make use of it.
A new sewer plant up there?
I know you have more.
We're running late.
Yeah. I'd like to say a few things also, and I think that going off of what you just mentioned, personally, I think it's a waste of water to throw it in the air and try to make it evaporate in today's times. And I think that we need to do everything we can to eliminate spray fields, which we have in a number of different communities. That Douglas Flat is one of the highest quality wastewater probably in the state, and should be used, if nothing else, to irrigate grapes or whatever. And so maybe as part of, this kind of segues into the idea that I feel is though we really need to look at a drought committee on the board as well as some other efforts to really be able to, because timing is of the essence right now with the I think the support money that's going to be out there, both federal and state, to address these issues. I think it's very, very important. I'd like to see all of these groups that are the Calaveras Wise, maybe we get a water conservation officer or staff or whatever term that you want to use, but a staff position shared amongst the different entities, cost share, to really relieve Joel and his staff of this ever increasing responsibility of time and whatnot. I don't know what it would take, but just kind of thinking out loud, I think that there's a need for that type of individual or staff. Whoever's going to house that doesn't need to be us necessarily. But in relationship, though, to this drought committee, the money for these projects, again, in water conservation, water reliability, and all these issues, as we see Prop 1 monies, I mean, these things are going to, 2 months out, and we need to have a grant ready to go. 2 months. I mean, that's can be a lifetime in governmental agency work. So I think that there really is value of that. The other thing, in my opinion, is in meeting our outdoor water usage conservation or cutbacks, 2 things that I see. One, I see the burden in a lot of ways to open the opportunity to reduce outdoor watering is the county's, Brian Moss's environmental protection group moving forward with a gray water use policy that allows folks under, fully permitted to be able to take that gray water that comes out of your showers, your wash basins and whatnot, and to use that for your outdoor watering. I think that's especially family of 4, family of 5 take showers for how long? And I mean, that's a tremendous amount of potential water that we may need to use to meet our required cutbacks. The other thing that I see are the leaks that happen in outdoor irrigation systems, whether it be a hose without the right, rubber ring, whatever. That, in my mind, is a significant waste of water that could be, or at least the potential is there, to really cut back again, to meet that 25+% reduction that we need to do. Those are the outreach things that I think are important. The last thing I'll say, a couple other things. One is I'd like to see a 0 potable water garden out here. 0 potable water use garden as part of our demonstration out here that people can come and see and take a look at that. That might be tied into a gray water or something like that. Amador Water Agency earlier this month instituted a drought surcharge to their customers because of the reduced revenues from the required cutbacks in conservation. That's happening to our neighbors to the north. Just FYI on that. I want to know also if we can develop a policy now with our fill and truck stations in relationship to this water conservation. I mean, my understanding is that if you have a key, you unlock it and you fill tank after, whatever. There's really no minimum use or maximum use, of the water that can be accessed by the public in tanks. And I think that we probably need to look at that. I see that as an area that we're going to see more and more use during this drought time. So, and maybe I'm wrong. But the other thing too, Dave, is what about public health? What about the hydrants and things like that in relationship to these water cutbacks? I really don't want to see, the potential public health issues compromised, because of this drought issue and what we can put in our lines or what can be used out of the hydrant, things like that. Holy smokes, I better shut up.
You bring up a good point. What does this do to our flushing program? Have we abandoned that?
That was prohibited last year by the government.
I have one suggestion, because I get a lot of calls. Anytime somebody calls me about their water usage spiking or something like that, usually the culprit is on their irrigation side. And I think, and one of the things that I'll either, if I think they're capable of doing it, I'll explain how to go out and check whether they have a water leak or not. But I think it would be great if we would do a video on our website explaining to them where their water meter is. Many people, if you haven't looked at your water meter, in most, there's a small dial in the middle of it, and then there's a cubic foot meter that goes around. If you shut off all your water, you've got nothing running in the house, and that dial is turning, you have a leak. It's a very, very simple way to figure out if you have a leak in your irrigation system, or it could be in your house. But I think if we would explain to them that, generally your water meter is at one of your property lines, typically. This is how you open the lid. Lift the dial on the meter, explain to them about the center dial, and give them some steps to check their own landscape irrigation. Because many people believe they also don't have a shutoff in the wintertime for their landscape irrigation. There should be a shutoff on your landscape irrigation that you actually turn off during the wintertime, because the water can still run through there if you don't have that shut off. So I just think that would be a helpful thing, because that's the first thing I tell people to do. And if they can't figure it out, I'll go over to their house and I'll show them. And so many times that dial, and sometimes it's going.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's obvious, but even just a small leak, you can tell if your toilet's leaking by that little dial in the front, because it turns fast, where the hands moves very, very slowly typically. So I just think that would be a good tool if we could get maybe the field staff to put something together on that.
Absolutely.
We just had that issue up with a customer in West Point earlier this month, and I went out and looked, and sure enough, they shut the water off, and that meter is just spinning around.
Right.
So it's like, well, very vocal landlord. Joel smiling.
Well, thank you, Joe. That was a good presentation. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Let me open it up to the public now. Or, I'm sorry?
Yes, and there's no public comment on this, just the GM.
Manager.
We'll have but if I can just note quickly, I know we've got to get to the next item, but a couple other things. We have submitted our application to the state for funding to the Department of Water, no, not actually, it's to the State Water Board Drinking Water Program to fund the Lake Tulloch infrastructure improvements so that we can lower the intake to the lowest levels and continue to stay in water. And that project very well may cost more than $1 million. So,
Whoa.
And there's, we've got the biggest time constraint on that is ordering the pumps themselves, which have up to 6 months to manufacture. So we need to do that as quickly as possible, because as we've referenced before, this agreement with the other agencies on operation of Melones and how Tulloch is going to be operated and keeping us in water is only in place through September. So we've got to make progress on that as quickly as possible. And what I just want to do, we need to come to the board with a special meeting related to that with Bill, and we'll keep you closely informed of what happens on that. But we're trying to get their assistance as quickly as possible. Also, I just wanted to note there was a case that just came out this week. It was referenced by Joel, the CM1 Capistrano case that found that their tiered rate system was in violation of Prop 218 and Article 13 of the state constitution, and that their tiered rates had not been developed in a way that showed that the charges were directly connected to the actual cost of providing that service, and as each tier inclined, the additional cost, the additional charges were related to additional cost to provide that additional volume of water. So that was invalidated by the Court of Appeal, Fourth Circuit. That case was Aqua and others provided, CSDA, League of Cities, I believe they provided amicus briefs on that in support of the city, recognizing the tiered rates are used throughout the state. So there could be dramatic impacts if this decision came out the way it did. I expect this will probably be appealed to go to the Supreme Court. But this is something to look at. It definitely has an impact on our ability to make any changes in rate setting to promote conservation. And that's something the governor, you may have seen the headline, the governor said that this decision is a straitjacket on conservation, because pricing is one of the key tools to accomplish that. And that's all I got.
Good, thank you. Let's move to new business. I do want to note a change in the schedule. What we'd like to do is move item 5B forward. We've got both participants here, including, I say two of the participants. Mr. Mills has arrived and Mr. Dean are in the audience. So is that possible?
You bet, absolutely. And this agenda, I don't have a PowerPoint on this, it's a discussion item, and I mainly want to be able to hear from those who played a key role in this effort. And I believe John has copies of the document itself as well to distribute to the board. The Aqua Headwater Initiative was something that began, I believe, in 2012, is that correct, Bob?
Yeah, earlier than that.
Earlier than that. And this was really the brainchild of in large part, of Bob Bean, and when he was here as a board member of Ccwd, and his persistence at Aqua, which again is this association that represents 90% of the delivered water across the state, is the largest such organization in the country. His effort to try to get them to recognize that there had to be some policy specific to the needs of upstream areas like ours, particularly the Sierra Nevada, but also other similar areas across the state, so that our issues like catastrophic fire and effects of changing climate and all those kind of things are taken into account, particularly when we are, the majority of the state's water supply originates in these areas. And through that, Bob was able to get this into the strategic plan for the Aqua Board of Directors. That began a whole effort, a work group was developed to create policy principles on the improving the headwater conditions of California. Those recommended policies were unanimously approved by the board. After that, we immediately went into to development of this framework document that surrounds the policies themselves. This is really the way Aqua develops its most fundamental policy statements for the organization is through the development of these framework documents. It did the exact same thing a few years ago in the development of these for groundwater management and trying to come up with recommendations that would influence the development of state and federal policy, particularly state policy. And as we've seen with the development of the recent Groundwater Management Act adopted last year, that was largely influenced by that framework document and what came Aqua's advocacy through that, those positions, and its ability to be part of the team that actually was working closely with the governor and the legislatures on the development of the final legislation. Our goal, selfishly for being in the area of origin in these areas affected, we wanted to see that our issues were given a higher priority and that we were able to better leverage the influence of an organization like Aqua by making this one of the foundational elements. And so this is a huge accomplishment that we have now adopted framework policy with a suite of 19 recommendations for actions both at the state and federal level to improve the condition and function of our headwater areas, and in large part our forested areas, to reduce the risk of catastrophic fire, to promote water quality and water supply, and in many ways things that benefit our local communities, to deal with issues just like the reason why we have fire-safe communities throughout our region, because we do care and recognize the immense danger that our communities are in if these conditions continue to deteriorate. I would like to have John Mills come up and Bob as well. John was, of course, John is a consultant of the district, and he's really one of the foremost experts on water policy in the Sierra Nevada, and he played a vital role throughout the development of the project, the framework itself, the policies, and then as well as we continue to work on it, their implementation, and has been at the leadership of that, and brings a wealth of information, knowledge, and experience on that, having worked on these issues for a number of decades, and at one time was actually staff to Regional Council of Rural Counties, where he worked on these issues for the up and down the state. So John, if you wouldn't mind coming up and just giving us your perspective on that. And as well, I'd like to have Bob after that come up. And Bob, I just want to thank you so much for your leadership on this. There's no way we could have done it without that. And really your tenacity and being here to a lot of people in Sacramento. This is going to, the net result is we now have a platform to advocate for interest.
Thank you.
We're already seeing the benefits of this. When I was in D.C. in February for the Aqua D.C. conference, we spent a day on basically an advocacy effort meeting with legislative representatives and with administrative officials. And this effort, this document, and the recommendations were part of about 5 or 6 key things that we talked about with them at every stop. So,
And Dave, if I could say something real quick, this is a great time to recognize former Director Dean for his efforts in pushing this through Aqua. In a recent conversation with Timothy Quinn, the Executive Director of Aqua, who would have liked to have been here with us today, but he had another engagement that's taken up most of his month. But he's indicated that this is going to be a topic, a focus of Aqua for the next couple of years. And without these efforts being pushed forward by both John Mills, Bob Dean, and our general manager, Dave Egerton, has been on this committee for at least a couple of years, pushing this through Aqua. And I think the state of California is from their efforts going to recognize the county and the counties from which their water originated, and start focusing at a greater deal on those areas. Thank you.
I agree with that. Thank you very much, Bob.
Wow, look at the snow in that photo.
What's that white stuff?
It's an old photo.
So I'm glad John was able to come up for air with the state board's regulations. He's been spending a lot of time, has been very close to that. I'm sure he'll be back to the board and probably in the next month as we work on trying to meet the requirements. John is very closely involved with that. And a lot of the things that we're trying to float in the way of ways to try to lessen the burden and make this more feasible are done with his strategy and his ability to talk offline, one-on-one with some of the most senior people that are implementing this. So it's been very helpful.
I was in Sacramento yesterday discussing the San Juan Capistrano case with state officials.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to get caught up on or informed about this, so great.
I want to also say as a member of the Aqua group working on this, I've worked on this for years, going back, as Dave has referenced, with both the Congress, the last Cal-Fed bill that was written had a section in there on integrated resources management and headwaters. It's called Watershed at that time, and I wrote those sections for Congressman Calvert when he was drafting it. So I recall having a conversation with Cal-Fed at the time, and their opinion was nothing happens upstream matters, it's buffered out by the dams. And that was, believe it or not, just 20 years ago, that was the thinking in California. Of course, 20 years ago, we also thought that we'd never have a drought like this, but a lot has changed. It has taken a lot of folks a lot of time to get this document done, and get Aqua to recognize it's important. It happened in different ways. In Southern California, they discovered that they had a 3-way cycle that didn't work: fire, flood, mud. And that they were investing millions of dollars in groundwater recharge basins, and those were being filled in with mud coming off the national forest following wildfires. And so they had to look upstream and say, that's a problem for us. And that's the Santa Ana watershed and the Chino Basin. And they've got an MOU in place now with the Forest Service. They're working on that in partnership. But they've actively taken up an investment strategy in the forest and said, we're going to help you out, excuse me, because of the problem in funding. In other areas, it's been more difficult, especially in a lot of our rural areas where we have low populations. Our populations are dwarfed by the landscape. Also, our tax base is small. And so we've had to be very careful and prudent in how we find areas to invest. There have been some huge areas of success. Some have been far away. I did some work with the folks up in the Upper Feather River in Plumas County, where they restored thousands of acres of meadows with headwaters protection above it with fuel thinning. It worked, and it prevented some of the Tahoe Basin fire from getting much worse than it was. When it moved into those areas, it dropped to the ground, burned cold, and it worked. Senator Feinstein saw that, as did other officials. So it can work. That was up in the South Tahoe PUD area, part of their service area, El Dorado. So there have been some lessons learned over the years. People have come around, but it's taken a long time. We started in 2012 officially as Aqua, but both Bob and I never quit. We've been working on this for 20 years, and it's been a heck of a process. Excuse me, hay fever. They formed a subcommittee at Aqua to work on this, and Bob volunteered to chair on it. And he worked with Pierce Swan, I believe was the co-chair at that time, if I'm not correct, Bob. But Bob was mainly the foghorn that kept us on course and kept us going. Dave and I worked on the committee. I worked down in the drafting section. I was the guy with the keyboard and put all of the language together. That was, the subcommittee was distilled down further into an Aqua drafting team, and we actually had these policy principles adopted in March of 2013. Believe me, these were not easy. We spent the first 3 meetings discussing what headwaters were. So, I mean, when you have to start off with what does it mean before you can get people to agree on policy, you have a long way to go.
You mean water doesn't come from the faucet?
Yeah, it comes right out of the wall, actually. That's your headwaters. So, we can talk later about that. You sound like a member of Congress now.
I've never been insulted more in my life.
Now you're following the script. Okay. We started this work, and it became very intense. We had folks from Southern California. We had folks from Northern California. And it was clear there were major differences. Their systems are different than ours. Their forests are different than ours, and they have different problems. But we all agreed that there needed to be work done on this document and that we needed to develop what you now have in your hand, which is the first time ever that I would point out that Aqua has done 2 things. One, seriously looked upstream and assumed that the dams don't buffer everything out. And secondly, they've taken a thought they had and completed it. And the thought they had was climate change is happening, and that means we have to do BDCP, and that means we need to do the improvements to the Delta. That was great, but there was another part of that which is reflected by what's actually happening on the landscape. Climate change is happening. I was at a meeting, part of the work I do is to sit down with the Forest Service from time to time and discuss these things with them, what the priorities are. We had a meeting about a week ago in Sonora with the interdisciplinary team of the Stanislaus National Forest on rimfire recovery. Sierra Pacific was there, a lot of the water agencies were there, saying, "This, what are you doing? How are we going to use herbicides? How you can do? What are your stocking rates going to be?" Please excuse me, my undergraduate degree is in forestry and range management, so I'm not going to go too far afield in that. But those came up. What kind of species we're going to plant? Even age, odd age stands, stocking rates, thinning frequency, and so on. One of the things that came up was the Forest Service saying, our replanting structure is different now. Because of our monitoring of temperature in the Sierras, we're moving all species of tree up 500 feet. What used to be at 3,000 is now at 3,500, and it goes all the way up to the subalpine zones on top. So we're seeing a change in the forest composition over the last 30 years. This squares up in a different way with what's happened in the Delta. And I want to bring the Delta into it because the Delta scientists have been analyzing all sorts of things all over the world as it relates to the Delta. And as they explained where they are in the Delta, because of invasive species and because of climate change, is no longer the Delta of 1865. It's not even the Delta of 1865. And the scientists were in agreement a few weeks ago when they discussed that they can't even restore the Delta to a time period before 1978. That's where it's changed. And that's how quickly it's changed. Within 2 years, we'll probably see the smelt go extinct. Other species will follow, and the leading fisheries biologists on the Delta said because of the changes that are occurring in the system, South Delta will probably be a large catfish pond within 20 years. So we're talking about a time frame that is accelerating. The change is happening faster, and there are scientists agree we can't keep up with it. There will be children graduating from high school in this summer who will still be working when the climate change predictions are coming true. There'll be a sea level raise of about 12 to 15 inches in the Delta. We will see the Sierras in this area with 30% less snowpack. The snowpack we do get will be highly variable. The change is not like this. It's not a linear line going up. It's very spiky. It changes dramatically from year to year. And what we're seeing is a 4-year record drought. We looked at some of the tree ring data on the San Joaquin River. So go back and you can't predict the future, unfortunately, but you can look to the past and say, when did we ever have a 4-year dry cycle this bad? And the modelers came back. They actually called me. I was on my way up to a meeting. One of the state board members said, I want to have this for this meeting, the state board member. The person called me up and said, are you sitting down? I said, I'm driving. He said, are you in the slow lane? I said, okay. How bad can it be? And so we found the 4-year period that matches the hydrograph of the last 4 years, 900 AD. Whoa. There was nobody here to experience that. Nobody in water has a reference point on this. We are, as the old ancient mariners used to say, we've come to that edge of the map that says terra incognita, the RBC monsters here. The white area of the map is where we are going forward.
What trees did they use?
They use a variety of trees. They use some of the sequoias, they use some of the older sugar pines, but they use trees that went back thousands of years. DWR, Park Service, and Forest Service data was used in that. It's incredible.
I hope they use the wood at least.
John, they also used silt sedimentation studies?
It was
As part of that?
mostly data,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they use the hydrographic model to go
Right.
back and predict it.
Right.
It's a pretty complicated.
Those
model.
tree rings go back like 2,000 years
Yeah.
with some of those studies.
Well, some of them are over.
And they were western states. It wasn't just California, Central Sierras. It was all over the West.
Shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't know what to do with this. And I heard the conversation right early on, the conversation on conservation. We're not in the 4th year of a 4-year drought. I hear people talking about we can make it to the end of the year, and I usually say calendar year or water year, because a lot of water guys don't think outside water world. So it's like the end of September is the end of the water year. So yeah, what are we going to do in October? Well, that's a new water year. Did it rain? No. Okay, well, what difference was it? So we have to look at this in a broader future. One of the best managers I know in California Water, and I had a conversation about how they're managing. I said, how are you looking at this drought? What are your management protocols? He says, this is year 4 of a 12-year drought. That's how we're managing our resources. Anyone going into this right now who's got storage better hold as much of it back as they can, because we don't know when we're going to get another average year.
Right,
The
but
problem with the hydrograph is that the predictions from the climate change folks who are monitoring this all over the Pacific, I know I'm getting off the headwaters, but this is how it's going to affect the headwaters. So what we're going to see is critically dry year, 300% of normal precip, critically dry year, dry year, 300% of precip. That's going to be how we determine average in the future. We're going to have to reoperate our reservoirs down the line. This isn't going to work. Our entire system in the Sierras was set up to manage snowpack-based watersheds. And when you do get a watershed that's getting 30% less, and then you get high slope rainfall events that are high temperature, it all comes down at once. So we have a serious problem. And headwaters is part of it. There's some statistics in headwaters that are shocking. And before I get into the details of that, I wanted to just touch on.
And John, as you probably know, SBI is doing the same thing with
Yes.
trees and moving, genetics and whatnot. It's pretty
This is the-
impressive, yeah, as far as.
This is the figure that gets me is, we talked about wildfire. And wildfire is only one component of the headwaters, but it's becoming increasingly important. And the number is that the amount of land burned between the years 2010 and 2014 in the Sierra Nevadas is more than was burned in the previous 70 years. That's another staggering number. We have fuel loads in the forest that are incredibly high. We don't have enough money in the federal budget to get ahead of that, management of the Forest Service, and also we've got to change how we're managing it. The SBI has come out with some changes that they're going to make. Their regional manager was at a meeting late last year on the rim fire, and he said, look, this is how we manage, this is what we do, this is what we've been doing in this watershed since 1950 in our predecessors, and this is all the forest that's burned up. Now, after 60 years of doing it one way and finding out it's not working, we're going to change, and I hope the Forest Service will. That's what he said. And I think Forest Service is coming around. Their problem is they are funded by folks whose, I think, sometimes their heart's in the right place, but their head's in the wrong place. Because those who think cutting the budget of the Forest Service is going to solve our problem are buying into the biggest wildfire we've ever seen. And the rim fire will be the precursor. It'll be the short cousin of what we see next. Because the next place to burn, if you go outside and look around, the next place to burn is not back in the Tuolumne Canyon. It's the Stanislaus. That's the next red dot.
Middle Fork.
And so this headwaters piece, we have moved ahead on this as well. I'm not going to go into too much detail in the document. I want to let you know where we are today. We're part of the coalition with the National Water Resources Association and others, Farm Bureau, Nature Conservancy, and RCRC. Tomorrow, the House Land Subcommittee, chaired by our own Congressman Tom McClintock, is going to hear testimony on what we think is the first step. And the first step is to isolate your fire budget from your forest budget. Because what happens right now is a forest will have a budget and they'll have a fire like the rim fire, and that will suck up all of their project money, all of their operations money, and it will overload the capacity of the forest. Same thing on the King fire. So what we're going to try to do is get the forest to set up a firewall, no pun intended, between a fire budget and the project budget. Otherwise, your projects that you start, fuel thinning projects and others, get interrupted. And so you cannot carry forward those projects and you move into recovery mode. And that's all you do is recovery mode. So what we're trying to do is isolate the fire budget, tie the money up there, and then have a large surplus at the regional office. So if you have catastrophic events, it doesn't drain the forest. It comes out of the RO. So that would be very helpful, and that's always been a problem in the Forest Service. And I think it's solvable. The second one would be to try to move ahead with some changes in the budget for the Forest Service so they can move ahead with fuel thinning. Now, whether it's mechanical or whether it's done by fire, and I don't mean wildfire, I mean managed fire, is a serious question. But the problem we had is I remember a meeting years ago with Secretary of Interior Babbitt in Lake Tahoe when he was discussing their objective, which was at that time, federal government wanted to do control burns on 100,000 acres a year. And that was to keep up with where they were. That wasn't to get ahead. And at the meeting, the Forest Service said, well, we're doing about 10,000 acres a year because of the California Air Resources Board. So we're falling behind by 90,000 acres a year. So how long will it take to catch up if we fall behind every year? There's a problem for you to figure out mathematically. I'm going to show you what. So that's why we're testifying tomorrow. Andy Fecco from Placer County Water Agency is a member of National Water Resources Association for the California region. He's going to be testifying. I spoke to our folks back there this morning and said, what are they looking for? They want ideas. They're going to do a couple of small bills. They're going to start narrow and probably start with the fire budget. Chairman Bishop of the House Resources Committee said he has high hopes that we're going to get a partisan bill done this year, and he's going to make sure it's first up on the committee agenda, and he hopes to have it done by Memorial Day. So this thing's going to move pretty fast, but it's going to be a very narrow bill and probably focus just on that budget issue. I'm bringing you up to speed on where we are, giving you an overview real quickly of why it's important. The document you've got in front of you, though, is not to be going on the shelf and forgotten about. There's a lot of actions in here. One of the key things we're asking for back here as we walk through section on recommended actions. There are a lot of recommended actions. We're going to have to pick off sections of that and go after it. One is we have a state board of forestry that has no one on there with water expertise. And we would like to see the state amend section 730 of the Public Resource Code and get two folks on the board of forestry who actually have water resources background, because water is the most valuable, no offense to the timber industry or recreationists or cattlemen or any of those still go out there panning gold, but the most valuable resource in the Sierras is water. And so that's what we need to start doing, is looking at how we manage these forests to improve the water quality and improve the water yield and improve the resiliency of the watershed. So I think if we get two folks on the board of forestry that would have that expertise, that would be helpful. We also need better ways to improve post-fire management. Once we've had a wildfire, right now we use the BEAR team, and they go in and they measure certain things, and they say, okay, that's great, this is what we measure, this is what the condition is. They miss a lot. It's because their metrics and what they look at are right here, and they need to look much broader. And then once we have a fire, we need to set up long-term monitoring, because the question being raised is, well, what's happening downstream? And we have folks downstream who have huge wildfires upstream. And then what the water agencies downstream immediately have to do is set up additional water quality monitoring programs to find out what's coming down, aside from the usual debris and ashes. And so that changes how they have to deal with their water treatment. It is a redirected cost from either inadequate or misdirected management at the federal level to local water agencies. That's got to be turned around. We should not carry the burden downstream, the problems upstream. Obviously, the other thing we have is in these wildfires is great risk to health and human safety. The County Board of Supervisors is usually the home of the OES. They have to do a safety element in their general plan, and hopefully that's a priority for them. It ought to be, if it's not now, because we have been very, very lucky in the last few wildfires we've had with the evacuations and the management. In Sears, we haven't lost any engine crews, haven't lost any citizens, and hand crews, so it's been pretty good. We can't count on that. And the way some of these fires are blowing up, some of the pictures you see in there, you talk to folks in the business and they will tell you, you've never seen anything like it. The other thing we need to look at is we do integrated resources management planning now. You have a McCullum, Amador, Calaveras map, IRWM, Tuolumne, Stanislaus, you participate in. We hope to get the state of California to embrace headwaters more strongly in there. Not every IRWM has a headwaters component, but it ought to be more clearly called out in there. That's an important issue. We also are asking that risk assessment be done. Napoleon once said, "He who defends everything defends nothing." You have to prioritize your watersheds. You have to look at your watersheds and develop a priority for protection and management. Some of those are based on, there's too much focus after a fire's out of going into the black area. You have to do recovery in the black area. If you don't get ahead of the next fire and go into those green areas and start working, you can have another problem 10, 12 years down the road. And it will even put your recovery areas at risk. So what we're asking for is that both CAL FIRE, California Forestry, and Forest Service begin to look at a risk assessment of their watersheds and identifying, because not just of the forest itself, but what's downstream and the communities that are there, what are our highest risk areas? And that's where we've got to hit the resources first, make those a priority. We also are asking that Forest Service collaborate with state agencies, public and private landowners, and local water agencies, and start tying fuel thinning with meadow restoration. That is two pieces of the same issue. It's not one or the other. Restore a meadow downstream from an area where you don't do the fuel management upstream, and you're going to have a wildfire, and then you're going to have floods, and it's going to blow your meadow apart. So you're going to lose a few $1 million in investment. Jeff, did you want to...
Well, I just, I'm trying to comply with our president's rules, but I'm going to break them again.
Vice President.
Vice President.
I can see you really going...
It's the term, meadow restoration. What we're really talking about is forest restoration. I think that the term needs to change for it to become more acceptable, because the reality is the forest we have today is nothing like the natural forest. I mean, it's like you talk about the Delta back from 78. I mean, if you go back and look at Yosemite, you see pictures of Yosemite back when they first had cameras, it doesn't look anything like it does today. There's so many more trees there today. So maybe the trick to getting the public or the environmental objection about forest thinning is we go back and we talk about forest rehabilitation. The fact of the matter is, we're going to have to thin it to do it, but it's just a negative term to society, because they think, well, you can't cut the forest down. That's not going to save anything, So anyway, it's just a terminology thing that I think maybe we have to come up with a different term for forest management as opposed to thinning the forest. So.
It is just one component, one aspect of the silvicultural management of the forest. You're right. We are, despite the terminology right now, we're getting a lot of environmental support for this. At the IDT meeting, I was in Sonora last week. There were representatives there of the environmental community who were saying, we need to get back in there. We need to do fuel thinning. We need to protect this forest. And they were actually identifying all of the problems that have occurred because of the lack of fuel thinning. So I think there are some environmentalists who are very heavily involved
No,
in this.
I agree. When we had the summit that kind of kicked this whole thing off, I think, or not kicked it off, but it kind of gave it a little momentum here locally. You know, the Buckleys and the Conservancy and all, they were all in agreement that this needs to go forward. But it's a general population education that needs to happen. And I think one of the keys to this that really has to be brought back into the focus is forest management, thinning the forest, is going to create a greater reliability of water supply. And I think that, you know, particularly in this drought time, when we talk about how much water the forest consumes, that 50 years ago was running into the reservoirs that could provide greater reliability, I think that should be a focus also. And I wonder if there's data, or if we should be seeking data that talks about as the forest has grown, more board feet or more trees per acre, what has that done to the water supply that's been released? I mean, I know for a fact that the forest consumes a great deal more water than it did 30 years ago. It consumes it. It doesn't go anywhere, you know. And so, I mean, I'd like to, you know, that part of the data I think needs to be put to the forefront. That because of these overgrown forests, there's less water in our reservoirs, and when it does come down, because the forest creates warmth, so it comes down at a different period of time. It doesn't stay as long as we would like it to stay.
Well, you did my presentation for me on research. That's some of the things we're asking for in research.
Any other parts that you want me to take over there?
On page 19.
We need more metal buildings up there so they won't burn.
Yeah, there you go.
Might melt, but
They probably
But that's part of, you know, Jeff's exactly right. That's part of what we're asking for in here is that we need more metrics. And one of the things, Forest Service has done some research on the composition of the forest by species, and it's not even the same as it was in 1980. It's
Yeah.
that dramatic. It has changed incredibly, and I'm talking about the Central Sierras. We no longer have the forest we had when we were kids. It's a different forest now, and we have to do things differently. And there is a lot of misunderstanding about that, especially in our urban populations, that they think everything's the same as it was now when dinosaurs walked the earth or something.
Yeah.
That's not the case. We have a different forest. We have a different California. We have a different Delta. We have to deal with what's here now. What, you know, as they say in baseball, you play the team you've got, not the one you want.
Yeah.
That's what we've got. And we have a challenge in front of us. The good news is Aqua's moving ahead on this. We are working on the next thing we intend on doing is working with the Delta Stewardship Council, who is very interested in understanding more about the Delta watershed. They've agreed with some of the things we said during their plans on comments on their plan is you can't restore the Delta if you don't also take care of the watershed upstream, which is the Sierra Nevada ecosystem, the Cascades, Trinity Alps. So they're looking upstream and saying we need to understand that. We hope to have a white paper developed with them that will go into their program and that will give them direction on how they interpret the Delta plan. They also are really interested on the science side of what's happening up there, because there has been some isolated research done on the very point you raised. On the Feather River, PG&E was seeing less water coming down. Their hydrologic models were saying, we get 100 units of precip, we should get 50 units of runoff. 100 units of precip, 42 units of runoff. Okay,
Yeah,
what's going on upstream? Is it illegal diversions? No. Is it a change in water rights upstream? No. So who's taking the water? The watershed's taking the water. We had some same things on the San Joaquin this year with some of the watersheds down there. We said, well, because of the fires we've had, we ought to see a lot more runoff. The Forest Service said, yeah, you'll see a lot more runoff. Didn't. Actually went the other way. 17% less water coming down because it's going into the ground and the forest.
And yet the state thinks that we're going to solve our water problem by telling people not to water their lawn.
Yeah, they're dealing with 1 million acre feet. We're talking about tens of millions of acre feet.
Right.
In terms of water use efficiency, I shake my head at people who are putting washers in their hoses and we're going to save California that way. The problem is upstream.
Right.
The problem is in the watersheds. It's not in the hoses. I mean, clearly you can waste water if you want to, If you work hard at it, you can waste water, but you can't waste, if you spent your whole lifetime wasting water, you couldn't keep up with the 100 acres of Sierra Forest.
You know, I have a cabin up at 7,000 feet, and if I shut up, I might drive up there today. But you'd be astounded. Typically, we don't get in there many years until July, but this year, because the snow impacts it. Well, it's all clear, and I'm going to try to drive up this afternoon. But you'd be amazed. You want to talk about a waste of water. Every winter or every spring that I get up there, or summer, whenever I get allowed to, you'd be amazed how many trees, big, beautiful, 4-foot diameter trees, that are snapped in half at 50 feet up and are deemed unusable. There's so many trees that are laying on the ground that have consumed so much water, but then they never salvage them. It's just a big wasted. It's just wasted lumber, And then there's all sorts of areas where it looks like they call it the dog hair, where it's just a big thick forest of small trees, and all they're doing is drinking water. I mean, they have very little economic value.
The fire hazard's going to go up. We've already, part of the discussions we had with the Forest Service just last week, southern Sierras are seeing tree die-off, pine bark beetles are coming back. So we're seeing that move north, and we'll probably see it in here within the next year. And then you've got even worse fuel problem. It's not all about fire, but it is about healthy forests. And you don't have healthy forests if you have the conditions we have out there right now. It's going to take a dramatic change. It's going to mean working with the administration in California. It's going to mean working with the Congress. When we have a team going back to D.C., whenever any of you folks go back there, this has got to be part of our conversation. Our congressman is the chairman of the subcommittee. He can make things happen. And we need the federal government to lead on this. And I don't mean lead from behind. They're going to have to lead from the front on our national forest.
Yeah, I totally agree.
They don't do it. No one else can do it for them. And we will pay the price if they don't, and our communities and our systems. So I think there's a lot at stake here. Aqua's taking a great step forward. Tim Quinn personally is committed to this. His board passed this unanimously. There was one vote against it. So I just want you to know we've got a lot of momentum behind us on this. Got some good folks working on this. I talk all the time with my compatriots in Southern California who have different issues, but they agree with us on strategy. So I just want you to know we are pursuing that, and we'll do whatever we can to advance that on all fronts. But for right now, it comes down to a hearing tomorrow morning at 9 Eastern Standard Time. I unfortunately will be in the Delta Stewardship Council meeting, another problem. But these days, there's usually 3 meetings every day that you should be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Well, thank you for the hard work. Appreciate it.
Well, I want to thank Bob. He's, like I said, he was our foghorn. Whenever we started to drift, he kept us on course. So it was strong leadership, and I'll let him take the floor now. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. But this is another challenge that, in my opinion, water conservation is important. People don't get killed in water conservation. This stuff does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I'd encourage, for those board members that haven't read this, to read through that, and if you feel so compelled to want to volunteer your time with Aqua on that issue or something, speak up. That'd be great. Mr. Dean.
Welcome back.
Thank you, I guess.
George.
This project, interestingly enough, I was just thinking about this
Hey.
project began for me about 7 years ago, almost to the day.
George, Mr. Fry, please, thank you.
Some things never change. Anyhow, nothing. I was on a pre-harvest inspection for a proposed clear-cut area in the drainage of the McCallum River. It was on the Green Creek tributary. And I was looking across a clear-cut area. It was a drought period like this, perhaps not as bad. It was about, I think, the 30th of April, to be specific. And I looked across this clear-cut area, and it was completely open and dry. I had to reach in about 2 inches before you began to feel even any kind of soil moisture. Do a 180-degree turn and look under the canopy forest, and there's still snow on the ground. And for me, that was a crystal moment, because it said, there's something wrong with the water management policies that we have in this state. I've noticed over the years that the state resources agencies, Department of Conservation, really don't spend a lot of time talking to one another. I think the Board of Forestry, for instance, has their own set of policies and principles that they follow. DWR does the same thing, but from a different perspective. And they really don't talk together and try to coordinate the issues. And this comes home loud and clear to me when I see certain descriptions in forestry practices of streams that are defined differently than they are with the water boards. But that aside, this particular project for me was, I think, another critical component in what I have to believe will be the future of water management in California. And you have to ask yourself the question, well, why is that of interest to us? We have so many issues we have to deal with here. We're fighting for what water we believe we're entitled to, and almost every meeting, Jeff, I remember you saying, we have lots of water. And you're right, we do. And we stand there along the stream and wave goodbye to it.
Yeah.
And one of the issues is, why is something like this, these headwater policy principles, the action documents and things like that, important to our mountain counties, Calaveras County, Amador, Stanislaus? I feel badly for the people in Stanislaus County because they have absolutely nothing. But aside from that, this is important because I think it creates for us a framework that we can use in developing water resources that will be meaningful to Calaveras County and perhaps maybe save some of the water that's going away now. I genuinely believe that we don't have any water rights, regardless of what we have in the way of allocations. Because if you have a pie that's divided 10 ways and the 11th person wants to come in and get a piece of that pie, they're not going to get very much, if any. And I think that's kind of where we are with regard to water. But if we can spend time looking at how we manage forests and how that particular forestry management practice within our boundaries, our political boundaries and our regional boundaries, will in some way or another help preserve a certain amount of water supply, there could be some payoff for us. But I don't know that for a fact. That's somewhere down the road, but it may very definitely happen. I remember one of the great quotes, and I wish I had the name of the individual who made it, because I think it's absolutely critical to what we've been talking about today. And that's when the Denver watersheds burned up, and they had huge amounts of siltation into their storage facilities and stuff like that. Now, they have a different geology and a different situation than we've got in the Sierra, but the fact nonetheless remains that they had a huge loss. And one of the directors in the Denver Water Agency that oversees this area said, I used to think water came from streams. Now I know it comes from trees. And so once we start making the connection that all of our resources are interrelated, dependent upon one another, and they have to be managed in that way, rather than be bifurcated and have your little silo of forestry management here and a silo of water management here, and perhaps maybe resource management in terms of grazing allotments and things like that. If we don't coordinate this process, we're going to be in serious, serious trouble. We're already in serious trouble, but it's going to get a lot worse, because as our water supply dwindles, if not from drought, certainly from demands. We're talking, a population of 50 million people by mid-century at the latest, probably only 20 years from now. And that's the same supply of water, that 10 pieces of pie are going to get divided even smaller and smaller. And here we are, 45,000 people in Calaveras County, the same numbers in both Stanislaus and Amador. And we think we're going to have some political clout to address this? I don't think so. So we're going to have to be a lot smarter about how we manage our resources. And some of that intelligence is going to come from how we coordinate the process. Are we going to do water management? Are we going to do forestry management? Are we going to do resource management? That's where we need to be. And I think Ccwd can play a huge role in that. And I think we can do it from not only a politically confined perspective, that is within the boundaries of Calaveras County, but I think we can also do it from a regional perspective. And the RWMs will lend in that process. But remember, the RWMs tend to be driven from the top down rather than from the bottom up. So we're going to have to be somehow or another in control of how this process plays out, and then hopefully be able to take advantage of some of the largesse that may come from that process. It was a long process. You know, putting this thing together endured reorganization of Aqua. Tim Quinn had a health issue that interfered. We had 2 or 3 different iterations of the bond, and when you start talking money, the water world becomes alert, and everybody sees how they can get their piece of the pie. And of course, we're faced with that now. And one of the worst things that can happen is to take this document and put it on the shelf. If nothing is done beyond this, we've failed. What this has to be is a beginning. And the beginning process is going to be manifold. It's going to come in a lot of different ways, but the fact of the matter nonetheless remains that we do have a baseline that will allow us to move forward and define how we want to deal with these kinds of things. And that's where I hope that you'll take this process. There's an awful lot of work that needs to be done. And one of the other things that has to be understood, and this is something I don't think Aqua understands very well, and I think this is something that we can take to Aqua and at least assure them that it's okay to do this. The expertise on these issues, whether it's forestry issues, whether it's watershed issues, is outside the bounds of Aqua. They really don't know. They know how to manage infrastructure. They build dams and they move water from Northern California to Southern California. But when they stand and look at a stream, they scratch their head. They just don't know what to do. And when they turn around and look into the forest, they're even more perplexed. So we need to be able to assure Aqua that we all have the same goals, and that is the watershed protection, the environmental protections that will allow the water management that has to become much broader. It has to include not just the engineered infrastructure, but also has to be the green infrastructure and the connectivities that exist between those different kinds of infrastructures. They have to know that this can work, it can be coordinated, and as a consequence, it's going to be better for everybody and everything. I don't have any questions. Anybody else want to say anything? It's time to go home. See you guys later.
Thank you, Bob. You know, I've got a couple of comments real quick, and then we'll get into public as usual. One of my concerns, and I've voiced that at various other meetings, is that there's a lot of discussion now about watershed management in headwaters. We have, at least to my knowledge, 3 significant efforts, 2 of which are very much significant, going on in this county, or at least discussions. And I'd like to see some sort of kind of combination of maybe working together, and that's not only the Headwaters Aqua, but also Sierra Nevada Conservancy's got their watershed priorities and their funding for their watershed emphasis and all. Maybe John, you can share some light on this, and then also as most recently is Cliff Edson's in the County Board of Supervisors efforts to really focus on watershed management. I don't know if it's only in Calaveras County. It isn't, but neighboring counties on. But nevertheless, it's an effort, a local effort by the Board of Soups that hasn't probably got a lot of traction yet. But so those are 3 different watershed management programs that I think have a lot of value in numbers, in partnership, and working together, kind of a thing. I mean, I reflect back in 1985 when I entered the Watershed Management Graduate Program at Humboldt State. I was one of 2 students in that program. Don't laugh. No, but now watershed management, especially at higher education, is really kind of taken off. So it's something that is going to continue to be out there, because we have to decide how we're going to manage our forests. If we're going to manage them for timber, as we have most recently, that's a whole different ballgame. You know, and that's more of managing as we have most recently. And what I found interesting is Sierra Pacific industry folks talking about their 30-year tree plantations now are burning so quickly they can't do it anymore. It's at a loss. So they plant these trees, and before they get to the 40 or 50 year maturation, or 80 years, they're gone. They're burned. And it's like, so they're wasting money, and they understand that. So they are coming up with a different idea of forest management. The bugs that John had mentioned, the bark beetles, and the scolidids and buprestids, and anyway, that moving from south to north is also moving from low elevation to high elevation. And all you have to do is drive up through some of the communities around West Point and look for the dead pine trees, ponderosa pine that's happening. I've got probably 400 dead trees on my 105-acre property. And what I found is how I manage by cut and pile for quail and spotted owl food with the wood rats and all. Totally, I need to burn that. I need to make it go away because those are bark beetle production havens. And so I've seen that. And right near the piles, I've got pine trees dying. It's like, duh. But anyway, I think that, again, if we're not going to manage them for timber, and we want to see the big trees that take hundreds, if not thousands of years to grow before we can harvest them, that's a way different policy in managing our forest. Are we going to manage our forest for water? The number one use of public forest lands in California is what? Public recreation from the standpoint of recreational driving. The number one use of our public forest, at least it was 10 years ago, I don't know if it's changed, it is for public aesthetics, basically driving, window viewing. If we're going to do that, that's another significant different management policy within our federal lands. We have to make that decision. And obviously we all want to say, well, why don't we have a little bit of everything? So that, diversity is the spice of life, but it also provides opportunities for every diverse interest that we have out there. So, I don't know. And the idea, Bob, are you still here? Did he go?
Oh, he left.
Put a document on a shelf becomes useless. And I had shown earlier the efforts 3-4 years ago in creating this low impact development and getting stormwater to infiltrate into the ground that the local government commission put together. I don't see any of that stuff happening at the county level as far as really, with direction, guidance, or policies to make new or relatively new construction incorporate those kinds of ideas. That, in my opinion, is a document that's gone on the shelf and has been forgotten about, and that's a real shame. So, anyway, any other comments, you guys?
Well, I think the forest management in Calaveras County should be the entire county from many perspectives, but catastrophic fire will occur in Calaveras County. It's going to incur soon. I would put a high certainty on it. This document probably, or even the action that derives from these efforts, probably won't stop it. But I think we got to start thinking about the next generation. That's we don't want to just keep kicking it down the road, and it'll be an economic catastrophe if the Stanislaus burns, and certainly is a danger to our particularly with the lack of access on the Highway 4 corridor. The added benefits to water supply, I think water. The current forest management practices are affecting water supply in a more significant way than any of the conservation efforts that we talked about today. That'll get all the headlines. So I'm certainly I want to see continued support, and anything that our water agency can do. I think we should be going it full force. I don't think there's a more important issue than preventing catastrophic wildfire in the short term and water supply in the long term. I think it's the most important issue in our county, in the region. So,
Good, thank you.
I got a quick comment, and I do think I'm going to be attending the Aqua conference in May, and I think a few of us here are also going to be, and it's good to have this coming out just prior to that. This is an education that Aqua is going to be focusing on for a statewide education, and I think educating everyone outside of our area is equally important. And it is going to bring financial, and that's the big key, is how do you finance this? This is a great ideas. There's the financial element is how do you get money into this program? I mean, I think that's what everyone is looking at but that's the way to do it, is education for the rest of the state. And I encourage my fellow directors and anyone else in the room to attend some of these seminars. It's going to be in Sacramento. I think the May 5th through the 8th, and that's, or 5th, 6th, and 7th for the most part, the Aqua Conference, and it's going to be bringing all the other water districts and water purveyors, water people from throughout the state. And I think that one of the biggest benefits that Aqua taking on this project, and I've got assurance that it's going to be a main focus of Aqua for the next 2 years, is education statewide, and letting everybody else know what the source water is, and it is in the mountain counties. Also, the Mountain Counties Water Resource Association has also taken on this and is promoting this, and also that group of people, and that group of agencies has a larger voice than just us, and the education is coming through them as well to their member agencies as well as the surrounding Northern California areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, at risk, I don't want to repeat much of the discussion, but in terms of studies on the environment, I'm glad that, John, you brought up about the tree rings and the studies that go back, because it seems like when we look at environment today, it all bases itself against the time that the settlement occurred from 1850s to present, rather than looking at the bigger picture of the cyclic changes in the environment. We know that fire changes weather, and fire affects weather, but it also has a longer-term effect on climatology due to its impacts. But also heavily forested areas and heavy vegetation also create weather changes and affect climatology within particular areas. Going back into the times, because I'm aware of this area going back to the 50s and that area, time period, and to watch how much more growth of trees has occurred in the last 50, 60 years is quite amazing. And yet we've done very little to nothing about it, other than the efforts of an SPI to come in here and try to thin it out. But the federal government has done virtually nothing. When they say they do a few control burns here or there, and what does it really benefit in the longer term? Not much. So there needs to be a real serious effort, and I appreciate John and Bob Dean and what you folks are trying to put together here to make this change happen, because we don't get a handle on it. I'm going to say right now, the Middle Fork of the Stanislaus primed. And I fought the 87 fire, and I fought the old Gulch fire as a firefighter, and I saw the devastation of what happened. And we're back at it again. And until agencies take a responsible role in thinning out that fuel ladder, it's just, when does it occur is just a matter of what time of day you want it to be. And you noticed on the news today, there was a discussion about where are we at in our moisture modeling for the fire season. And as of today, we are actually in early June under normal climate conditions. So this is going to be a very interesting fire year. Now let's think about next year. And if the drought continues, the modeling we're looking at now is going to be even more exacerbated than what we're seeing today. So just kind of put all those things together, and we have a challenge on our hands. And we need to take a proactive role. Doing studies is great, but it's getting it on the ground and making it actually a functional project. That's where it really becomes something special.
That's what I like about this document is they have thorough action items, and I think this isn't just a report; it's a recommendation. I think that's where a lot of people will state the obvious, and then you lose your momentum, and it goes away. But I think that I'm glad that this document has the action items in it to keep people focused.
Good.
Can we take a short break?
Dave, you had a comment?
You bet. I just wanted to thank you all for expressing your strong support for this effort. I really, when you first see it, they might not understand what the connection would be to our business and operating a water system, and there are so many connections, and it really is. extremely helpful for us to hear that this is a priority for this board. And when you mentioned the watershed degree, I'm sorry I failed to mention that we have another graduate in that field in our meeting today, and that's our new Water Resource Program Manager, Peter Martin, who's going to play a big part in this effort ongoing. This is going to be part of his work as well, and he actually worked for City of San Diego before he came here, and worked under the person that was actually became the co-convener of this effort with Bob Dean, and so I want to welcome you, Peter, and thank you for being here. Thanks. Sorry I didn't mention you before, but it's good to have you, and we'll have Peter back with agenda items before the board soon.
Maybe we need to bring back an agenda item about being more involved with the RWM than we are just as a MAC
Got it.
or as a WAC. I mean, just
Yes, that's definitely on this.
Congratulations, Peter, and welcome.
Thank you.
we're just part of the advisory. We need to be fully engaged.
Take a short break.
Public.
Good, let's go ahead and open it up to public comment.
Thank you.
Keep that.
My name is Peter Race. I'm from Jenny Lynn. And all this issue's been kind of tied together. I just don't have a problem with the forest fires. In the 5th District, there's something called Manzanilla, the little dirty bush, burns like hell. There's a forest fire, and that with the damage to personal property would be substantially larger, let's say, than out in the forest land. As personal property damages, you have substantial acreage of just plain manzanilla growing all over the place and evaporating all the good water going up to the sky, go up to the Missouri River. I'm also glad that you informed the distinct directors about that appeals court ruling about the tire system. They might want to consider that going into the budget, because that's going to make a little difference. Also, I'm glad that, but nobody mentioned it. You talk about saving water and all that stuff. Nestle's water, it just came out last week. There's 2 big bottling firms. I think some of them in this county.
They're not controlled.
They don't even realize they've been there they haven't had no report for 20-some years. They're bottling water and getting it out, and your PR people telling the 5th District save water, that they haven't even used the amount that they're allowed to. So, I don't mind putting yes, I do mind my service dues that I pay a month, every other month, to give a PR to the public. The 5th District doesn't quite all that have that problem along the Calaveras River. We're not even using the allocated amount of water we have. Investing in infrastructure. When those schmuck in Sacramento, and they get tired of talking both sides of their mouth or any other body cavities, I like to see what is the money that they've been taking. Where's the money went with the Clear Water Act, AB 84, I believe it was called? Where's the money spent? If you look back to the past couple of years, how much money the taxpayer put in for water, I bet you 99% of the people in Sacramento couldn't give you an answer. Talk about cost and enforcement. You take a look at the back of your bill, you stop at the water meter. And if you go past that, you're going to be carrying your kneecaps on your shoulder on my property. If you want to go to court and get a warrant or something, a service warrant, administrative, whatever you want, then we can still go back to court. The cost of these administrations. You're talking about a small portion of the community in this county. You're taking the money from the folks who get no direct benefit from CCWD, who's not connected to or have any service out of it. It's kind of unfair for them to supplement your policies or ideology. I mean, it would be nice to see how the money is being spent for the source and the recipient of the funds. I don't know, 5A, you've been finished with. The property tax should be accounted for, the sources, please. And what is it going to? Instead of just going to a nice big pot and have a stew. Because if you want cooperation and appreciation for your hard work, please disclose the source of the money and the recipients of the money and justify it. I'm glad when your general manager goes up to Sacramento and brings down their policies. But folks, whatever they say, I trust them as far as I can see them, and maybe not even that far.
Mr. President, can we focus on the agenda item?
So, please, let's get some straight answers, because that's just, if you want some more support, especially, the only answer I hear is, hey, we need more money. Baloney, let's account for the past money that you've been spending. Thank you.
Any other public comment
On this agenda
on
item?
this agenda item? Thank you. Okay, we'll close the public comment on this. No action required. And we'll move, you guys want to take a break or what? 5 minutes?
5 minutes?
Yeah,
Sure.
5
Yeah,
minutes.
let's do that. We'll go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Looking at the Ebbets Pass water system, reach 3A, and motion, or at least presentation, first of all, by engineer Mr. Palmer.
So this is for the Ebbets Pass Reach 3A project, which I know there's been a lot of discussion over the past year about this project. And this is the loan resolution that, we applied for the USDA loan, and it was approved. So this is just a loan resolution that obligates and the district for that debt of to fund the construction of the project. And it consists of a $2,622,000 loan, a $1,378,000 grant, and then additional funding, matching funds of $1 million from Ccwd, totaling $5 million. And so this is just the resolution to providing for the incurrence of the indebtedness for that grant/loan, and just basically giving USDA the signal that we're signing on the line and willing to accept that obligation. So, and we've talked in the past about this project. It's in Arnold. It runs from basically the Metamont Center down over to White Pines. It's 19,000 feet of 12-inch diameter water transmission line. And the reason for replacement is this pipe's been in the ground. The existing pipeline's been in the ground for 50 years now. It was built in 1965. It's, as we know, it's had some leaks and breaks, caused a little excitement up there in Arnold. And so it's due to be replaced. So, and we're planning on starting construction later this summer. Probably is going to continue into next summer. We still have to acquire some easements and work through some property issues with some of the landowners up there. So that's really just my presentation.
Okay, anything new to report from when we spoke or had conversation or discussion about the project?
As far as the status of the engineering portion of it?
Yeah, or progress with easements or any of that?
Well, as part of this USDA loan, that we're authorizing the GM to sign off on the paperwork, and it comes with some conditions and obligations and terms, and they have specific requirements they want us to meet for acquiring property. We have to get appraisals to assess what the value of those is. So we have engaged a property appraiser from Sonora to do those appraisals and engage the property owners. So we have retained a licensed land surveyor to prepare the exhibit maps and the legal descriptions for all of those easements. So that's already been done. So we're we're moving along on it and making good progress. It's just, it takes time to walk through all the steps, you know, and once you engage property owners, hopefully that'll go smoothly.
Yeah, yeah, good.
And as far as the design effort, you know, it's kind of going parallel with that. You know, I suspect that, you know, we've had a few hiccups in that, but we're working through them, making progress, and, you know, pretty soon it'll be at the point where I think I'll have more control over the situation as, and we won't be having to, in terms of not having to, you know, rely on a product out of our consultant. We'll have the product we need out of them, and then we'll be free to put it into a bid set and get it out to bid and under our own personnel. So we'll have a little bit more flexibility in that situation.
Good, good.
I'd like to move forward with a motion adopting this resolution as outlined in our, our board packet.
I'll second.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion with the board?
I just want to kind of, you do a rundown on the loan and the grant?
Yeah, it's, you know, I'm not the financial officer, obviously.
Well, I could do it. I mean, it's we're talking about a $2.6 million loan from the USDA. Any idea on the rate or term?
It's a 40-year term, up to a 40-year term, and it's their standard intermediate rate, which is, it varies. So it could, I think right now it's about 3 to 3.5%.
Okay. And then 1.378, 1,378 grant component, and then the district funding share. Well, it says 1 million, but obviously we're going to be paying that the other debt off also. But I mean, the good news is we got a $1.4 million grant,
Right.
that we would have otherwise had to pay for. So I just
Correct.
wanted to highlight that.
No, yeah, it's absolutely great. You know, USDA has been a good partner for us for years and have funded our projects and given us grants. So it's always great when we can take advantage of that.
And I would like to express my appreciation to Charles and to Bill and the amount of time they spent with USDA staff, particularly Frank Rizzo, and all of that. I mean, there's really no such thing as free money. There's a lot of effort that goes in to make this possible, to get a grant like this, and many, many hours to prepare all the materials and build those relationships. And this is an important point in us being able to sign, by this resolution, being able to prepare to enter into the agreement so that we actually can formalize the acceptance of the grant, which is really good news. I mean, that's how we're trying to stretch, again, those R&R funds, which, you know, I think it was the second highest priority project this fund was under the R&R program as adopted. And so I know Joel and I want to work on getting this message out to the public that we have received this grant, and we will move forward with that as part of the project. So.
Good. Mr. Mills?
And it's my understanding that through what we talked about with Jeff, that this USDA loan, that if we wanted to pay it off early, that we have that option to do that. We're not locked into that 40-year cycle.
That's my understanding as well, yes.
Yeah. Which is really, it's a great way to go.
Yeah. Good. Any public comment related to this topic?
Any other comments from the board?
We're in the meeting.
The $2.5 million, is that going to be obligation for the whole district, right? The whole district as a whole? And you got enough coverage, income coverage to,
Yes.
no problem paying for it, right? Okay. Have you seen the condition of the grant? What are the small prints? Because I didn't see it in here. Was it, I see for a good reason to have it. And the next question is, how many hookups do you have in that, in this project right now? This,
How many connections are?
what is,
Okay, so that's two questions. Go ahead. I'll
okay, fine, that's fine. I'd like to know how many hookups you're gonna have. What portion of the loan they're gonna be paying back, the beneficiaries, and how much is the grant gonna cost the taxpayers? What interest rate is the grant gonna have to be repaid by the taxpayers also? Thank you. The grant's not free lunch. Somebody's going to pay for the grant.
Okay, David, would you like to answer any or all of those questions?
The grant itself, I mean, those are federal funds, so, you know, that's, well, we've already paid into that as a taxpayer of the U.S., so, I mean, we're trying to get a portion of that back. Our cost will be, you know, the ongoing staff time and getting the grant and continuing to do the work of administering it. But some of those costs will be reimbursable. The question of who pays for this is a general, you know, we have our finances are set up on a general district-wide accounting system. You know, we're not just segregating this cost to those customers in the Ebbets Pass area. Charles, you maybe have a better sense of how many customers we have that would be served off 3A line. I think Ebbets Pass, I mean, I recall what Bertha was mentioning, 45% of the customer, water customer base.
It's all that downtown area, so that all the commercial district is, and all the surrounding homes off the whole surrounding hills. So it's probably easily a few thousand customers off of this line.
And I think there's really, and I know this is a question that we get a lot about, why do we not, you know, limit the zone of beneficiaries for a particular project and ask them, and them alone to pay for the project. And I get that, you know, that may seem on the surface to make a lot of sense, but the challenge is, if we don't get these projects done like this, it creates liabilities that we as an entire district will have to pay. You know, there's potential fines and penalties if we have you know, public health violations. There's also potential risk of someone being hurt. That certainly falls back, would be a liability of the entire district. So you know, a lot of those things. And to be honest, I think one of the really important parts of this project is it really is an opportunity for us to do some additional water conservation by improving this. We can reduce some of our system loss in a pipe that's well beyond its useful lifespan, has problems. It's you know, concrete lined steel pipe. You know, we know it's got problems along the joints in particular. This is one way that we can help further our conservation efforts, but without having to, you know, to impact people's quality of life. And that's a benefit for the entire district, because again, those are the requirements that we're placed on as an entire district. That affects our water rights, which is an asset of the whole district. So,
Good, thank you.
Something to think about too is treated water is considered a hazmat in a spill. Go figure.
Go ahead.
This kind of goes to one of the things that Dave, you brought up earlier today, that we got a $54,000 check back from our liability carrier for having a good record over the past couple of years. It's from decisions like this to move forward on these dilapidated, which could cause liability problems in the future. It's good decision making on our part, and that it has come back to with a financial benefit, and that our claims history has been beneficial for the pool, and certainly for our district.
Good. Any other public comment? Okay, let's go ahead and close public comment.
Call for the question.
Let's call for a vote. Then we've had a motion and it's been seconded. Roll call.
Is that the way you do
Director
it?
Mills.
Aye.
Director Adamant.
Aye.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
And Vice President Strange.
Yes.
It's 2 ayes and 2 yeses.
So the motion passes 4 versus 1 absent. Yeah.
Bring it back when Bertha comes back.
Okay, good. Next item then is the CCWD, discussion action regarding declaring CCWD property surplus, APN number 048-003-190, the 12144 South Comanche Parkway in Burson. Mr. Diamond.
Well, CCWD purchased a 3¼ acre piece of land across South Comanche Parkway as part of an effort to bring a public water supply system to the North Burson area. After 2 unsuccessful attempts back in the 70s and 80s at forming an assessment district to finance that water distribution system, CCWD purchased the property on which it developed a well with the thought that at some point in the future it might prove useful. There was a revisiting of use of the property back in the early 2000s as a potential filling station for either potable or non-potable supply, but due to the location of the property and the lack of funding to make significant improvements in the site, it really deterred any movement on the project. In more recent years, staff installed a gate, put a power drop in there to try and enhance the value of the property. But up until now, the property has not been declared surplus. And Mr. Tully Simone, representing the current owners that have the large piece of land surrounding the CCWD parcel, has written the district with interest in repurchasing that piece of land for the family's interest to reintegrate it back into the ranch land that surrounds it. And staff is recommending that the board does move forward with the declaration of surplus property. Under financial considerations, we can go into closed session to instruct the property negotiator as to pricing, but I wanted to disclose some of the sunk costs that have already been incurred by the district. Well property was purchased for $30,000. The general manager that was here in 91 estimated the site development costs, at least up to that point in time, were about $52,000. And the power drop and gate that I mentioned cost about $30,000. So about $112,000 dropped into the property. That's the
And then our gate was stolen, huh?
And the gate, unfortunately, was stolen and replaced with barbed wire.
Do we have a tank fill station currently in that area, or something that could?
The folks from that area and other neighboring areas go out to, I think it's the firehouse at Jenny Lynn Approach Road. Jeff, is that?
I think they go either place. I think most people probably go to Jenny Lynn. I think it's easier to go up as opposed to going down Burson Road, but probably both. I mean,
We get people from North Burson as well as Campo Seco, some from Wallace, Rancho Calaveras, folks who are also visiting that filling station.
So I hear two then in the area.
no, I wouldn't call them in the area at all. They're 7-8 miles away.
Okay.
This is on Highway 12. This would be like North Burson Road. So you got to go either Burson Road back up to Highway 26 to get to the Jenny Lynn station, or you'd have to go up Highway 12 down 26 to the Jenny Lynn station. The problem with this is it's not necessarily a potable source. I think when we talked about it before, there were issues with perhaps arsenic in the well.
Yeah.
So there were some limitations on actually us providing it as a potable solution. Although, you know,
Then we have a typo in 9B? The address?
Yeah. One of them, 12144 in 5C versus 12114 in 9B.
Oh, on the physical address, on the site address?
Yes, sir. If the APN is correct, there is no issue here other than just correcting the typo, but if we have,
APN's correct.
that's the key.
Okay.
Okay, the address isn't, so we just correct the address, please.
I just want to make clear, declaring it surplus doesn't mean that we will sell this piece of property.
It means we'll move forward with our purchase towards disposition of the property.
It'll
which
be
can
offered
lean
to,
towards
it'll be
sale.
offered to any other public agency first, right?
That's correct.
And then it will go to whatever our bid process is.
Take steps.
But anybody could go purchase this piece of property
According to the policy, yeah.
After being offered the public agency.
after being offered. So I mean, we'll have some sort of a sealed bid.
60-day window that we give notice to the public agencies, and then they let us know if they're interested.
But we can, at that, I'm just trying to review it because it's been a while, but we can set a minimum bid on this
Sure.
and then have a sealed bid type of scenario.
We can do it that way, or negotiate with those folks that are expressing interest. We could discuss that.
Okay, I just think, I think we should because highest value, I mean, obviously has got to be our intention. And while this would be a benefit to the adjacent cattle guy, probably would provide a pretty nice single-family residence also. And that may be a higher value.
So we can talk about those in
Yeah.
closed session then and really get a kind of a direction. But I agree, yeah, we don't want to quote unquote give it away.
Well, I don't know if, because I don't think they attached our surplus property policy, but we have a very specific policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, policy government.
Good.
Do we have a motion on this?
No motion yet.
I so move that we accept.
Second?
Okay, we've got a motion by Director Mills, seconded by Director Davidson.
As part of this discussion, what I'd like to bring up or ask the board to consider is how many other properties like this does the district own? And I know of at least two or three or four, 5 or 6 that have come up in my time here. I was kind of surprised to see this, and I knew nothing about this particular piece of property as to when we bought it, what we bought it for, and I'll bet you there's quite a few others. I'd like to suggest the formation of a committee, and I'd like to be a part of that committee if possible, maybe a property committee, just to look at the what kind of properties the district has like this. There might be a beneficial. At this point in time, with income and expenses are at well, I don't know if they're always at a peak. It seems like just to take a look at the alternative uses for properties that the district owns like this, and what the other benefits they might have to the district besides sitting in our coffers.
It's kind of
something going forward.
Kind of interesting you bring that up because Dave and I had this conversation Monday and about all property, identifying all property that we hold that might be surplus for that reason. So that's good timing that you thought
And so
about.
however the process we go through, and maybe it's our president Underhill's creation or suggestion of a creation. I'd like to try and move forward with that and soon.
Okay.
Just to provide a little history, we've done that 3 or 4 times in the past. That list is pretty well documented. I think by now, I mean, our biggest 2 surplus properties is the property, that the other boards bought for just out on the other side of town here, and then of course the old admin center. But there's a spattering of small tank sites and things of that nature out there that may or may not have economic value, but typically staff reviews them every few years or so, but it'd be good to take another peek at it and see what.
Right. We'll include a 50-acre parcel that we had for a park.
I don't know that another committee, I mean, we could do it with the engineering committee or probably an existing committee, but we can let Director Underhill decide on that.
Well, we've got a rental property from what I understand.
Right next to the treatment plant?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's being used as a rental property any longer because of its location. I mean, that's just one other thing to look at, and I think that's been created. I think is that surplus right now? Maybe?
No, I don't
No,
think so. I think
it's still on the books.
Okay.
It's still there.
I think also with our large land holdings, that we've got treatment facility, maybe there's portions of that wouldn't compromise our future vision of the property that we could consider being surplus as well. Doing a lot line adjustment or, whatever, separation of a parcel or whatever. I don't know if we need 400, 500, 600 acres. Maybe.
Okay, I hear you, and I'll be working with with President Underhill to either use a standing committee or to form an ad hoc committee to do this. But it's a very good idea. I mean, certainly, I don't think we're in the business of land speculation, and there are liabilities associated, obligations to maintain this property, you know, we don't want it unless we really need it for our future plans. So,
Good, good. Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor,
Public comment.
or on the what?
Public comment.
Yeah, public comment, thank you. Blah, 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 blah.
You raise your hand, and I hate to disappoint you, sir. Yes, I would like to see all the real estate properties that this district accumulated. I'm sure the district is not here for an empire building, but let's put those land back into such productive property tax, and would help everybody. So let's get back to just a basic business as a service and not real estate building. Thank you. It would be nice to pay off some of those debts.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much consensus of the board. Any other public comments on this topic? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it up to vote. I'm sorry, what's that?
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye, yes. 4 to absent. Passes. Okay, the next new business item, 5D, consideration of position of support for AB 647, Eggman, expanding the legal definition of beneficial use of water to include storing of water underground for specified purposes. General Manager, Mr. Egerton.
yes, Mr. Vice President, members of the board, this is brought to you the recommendation from the Legal Affairs Committee of taking a position of support on this bill. This bill is from legislators in the San Joaquin Valley and is being supported by Stockton East Water District. And has actually been has been amended as it's gone through the assembly and now has co-authors including Kristen Olson, former assembly member for this district, and Senator Berryhill as well. So the general issue being addressed by this bill is that as of right now under the law, there's a list of what's deemed to be beneficial use of water by those who appropriate surface water and put it to use. Those things are recognized as beneficial, and we talked about earlier what's deemed to be not beneficial or unreasonable. And so these things are used. These things are a list that we're able, just like for municipal use. That is something that we can point to say, we're using our water in a beneficial manner. We're establishing our use of our water rights, and that's important for us. But as of right now, groundwater banking in and of itself is not part of that. So if you take surface water and you divert it and directly inject it into the ground or put it into a spreading basin to let it seep into the ground, or if you're doing conjunctive use where someone is using it in lieu of taking groundwater, and so you're indirectly keeping water in the ground, those things are in and of themselves, putting that water in the groundwater bank is not deemed to be a beneficial use of the water. The requirements that are in place are somewhat cumbersome and a little awkward given where we are now with the new law on groundwater management. And that basically requires that you do the banking within an existing groundwater management authority, that it's accounted for using the framework that they've established, that the water is taken out within a certain time frame within the period that you have to, so that it's not forfeited, and then ultimately it's put then to a purpose that can deem to be beneficial. That's the state of the law right now, and being able to establish that that groundwater banking effort is actually beneficially using water under your water right. Things have really changed with the adoption of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014, which really puts a priority on doing something to address the overdraft conditions of groundwater basins, just like the Eastern San Joaquin Basin, which is one of the critically overdrafted basins in the state. And so this legislation would help with the efforts of trying to recover those basins by allowing groundwater banking to be in and of itself deemed to be a beneficial use if certain conditions are met. And really those are conditions that the water is being put into the basin to deal with water quality issues, to keep saline intrusion at bay, or to prevent other contamination. If you have a plume of contamination, for example, in your groundwater basin, to try to isolate that and prevent its spread. And then as well to help remedy and prevent land subsidence, and that's obviously a big issue in some areas of the state. And then if you put the water in, if you bank it for those purposes, and you would not be forfeiting it for the time that it's in the basin, and then you'd be able to pull it back out and use it for other beneficial purposes. How this would potentially affect CCWD, why would we be interested in this? We have obligations now under the Groundwater Management Act as far as in particular the groundwater Eastern San Joaquin Basin, because we physically overlay a portion of that on our western boundary. So we have an obligation to participate in that effort to develop a groundwater sustainability agency and a groundwater sustainability plan under this law, and to implement the plan in several decades so that we're on a course to have a sustainable groundwater basin. All of those things we have to be a part of, and certainly we will do that in cooperation with the county as well and their expertise in environmental management. But we really have an opportunity because surface water is recognized as one of the key ways that maybe the most important way that we're going to be able to accomplish that is to actually have dedicated surface water supplies to advance the effort, and particularly through conjunctive use. So, really making sure that in the times when we have excess surface flow, we're able to use that, we're able to bank more groundwater, and then that can be the source of drier times, and really keeping water in stream. And certainly with our position upstream of that groundwater basin and others, we have the ability, and with the raw water rights, if we had the expanded definition of beneficial use, we potentially could partner with others to really advance those sustainability efforts in a way that helps us establish our use of our water resource. And so next steps, this bill was passed out of the Legal Affairs Committee. It was recommended, as I said, from Legal Affairs. It passed out of the Assembly Water Parks and Wildlife Committee, and it's now in appropriations in the Assembly. And I'm actually part of the work group through Aqua that is working on this bill. There's differences of opinion up and down the state on how far the definition of beneficial use should be expanded, and a lot of that has to do whether you're receiving water under the project, which gets the benefit of a lot of the surface water right now, and some of the water that would be put to this effort. So I think I think there's an opportunity for us to come up with a solution, and I think the amendments to the bill may get us there, and ultimately we'd love to have the support throughout the state so that this bill can make it through the legislature and would be widely embraced and can be part of our local solution. And again, provides us with an opportunity to really do something with our water supplies into the future on a local basis with our local involvement that we think is good for our water resource needs. And so that's all, and just a request for a support position on this bill.
Any comments?
I'd make a motion that we support this bill.
Second.
Got a motion, got a seconded. Couple of questions that I have. I think that Stockton East currently has infrastructure that would be able to deliver our Stanislaus River water into some of their groundwater banking facilities now, I believe, right, without any new construction or at least relatively minor adjustments?
That's my understanding as well. And as well, certainly, we have the water at New Hogan as well, so that, we have a couple of sources potentially.
Yeah, and New Hogan.
And the
Okay.
Stanislaus, is reaching other groundwater basins immediately downstream that are in the same situation. Yeah, sure.
And this is both raw water as well as treated wastewater. I assume potable water is something that probably shouldn't be put underground, or have discussions gone that far?
Yeah, I mean, raw water is the only thing that I envisioned in this type of effort. I mean, it's conceivably, I guess, recycled water, I guess, potentially. But I mean, most of the water, the volumes of water that we're talking about to achieve the state mandate is really going to have to be a raw water delivery. Certainly, there'd be no reason to use potable water. It's mainly let's get that raw water in. But again, it could be a movement of potable water into to supply municipalities that otherwise would be making use of the groundwater. So it could be in lieu of that. But certainly the quantities that would be largely raw water would be the medium.
Good. Any other discussions? Do I go to public on this day, Mr. Davidson?
It's your choice.
Yeah, let's go ahead and open it up for public discussion if there are any. No? Okay, having no public discussion, we'll close it. And we've got an action, or a second. I'm stumbling through this, sorry. Let's take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. 4 to absent. Good.
We got approval.
All right, now we'll move to old business, and we have nothing to report. Item 7, board reports, information, future agenda items. Mr. Mills.
Wow. Didn't have as many meetings this past month as I've had in the past. It was, 36 last month, and about 16 or so in the last 30 days. Altaville Maloney's fire, we had a discussion around the finding of a Type 3 engine. I don't know if you're aware, but Type 5s are probably not going to be used this year for the fire season, and it is going to impact the financial status of fire districts that do not have the right equipment for the need. And so they've already secured a Type 3 engine, which is really, really cool, which means they're going to sell off their 2 Type 5s. I did a tour of the Douglas Flat wastewater treatment plant. I got to say I was very impressed with the package concept, the modular concept, the expandability, the quality of the water that's coming out of there, that belt press. There's so many pieces of that just scream for us to do more of that type of methodology in our wastewater treatment. It looks like that's a regional concept in my world, and it could go forward from there. We had 30 plus in attendance on 2nd April at the Highway 4 Corridor Committee. General plan seemed to kind of take up some of the conversation, but broadband is an issue, and I think we're going to probably continue to work on finding ways to generate a countywide network for broadband and get out of the wire concept. Just think wireless, think how quickly we can move data with it. And then there was other meetings that I've attended. Murphy Sanitary. I'm really glad to see Cindy Ccwd as being very involved with the RWM, and I see her as a point person in the grant process. She really knows her stuff, and I'm very appreciative of what she's able to bring to the table. Did have a staff meeting with the IBW and the shop steward on their concerns. The meeting went very positively. I think they understand that it's a two-way street, and that we need to work together, and it's got to be a give and take. And as we kind of crunch down the numbers going into next year, they need to be looking for ways, just like we do, to make this work out for everybody, the ratepayers as well as the staff, all the way through. So very good meeting, and I'm looking forward to future meetings with them. Board of Supervisors, I couldn't talk because Terry was there and Bertha was there and you all talked, so I had to be an observer, which was unusual. Thank you for being there. That was very nice. Union Public Utility District came out of that with a very good positive, $1,000 in money to be spent that they agreed to for signs for Joel's effort right here to put up in the area. 10 signs they want to get to put up in their area, along with paying for a portion of the booth and then also having money set aside for water conservation things. So I thought that was a big, very positive step in their part to step up and want to be a participant in this whole effort. And then I did an interview with the Calaveras County Community Television, which will probably be shown here on Channel 7 within the next few weeks. And then Angel City Council last night, really good discussion on water and how they plan on meeting their goals. I know Alan Vallo's here with UWPA, and they're challenged the same way as we are, is they didn't meet that 25%, and they're struggling as to how they're going to do that, or are they going to go to 2-day-a-week watering? How do you monitor it? So each agency is going to have their challenges, and I'm glad to see that they were tangling with it early, but then they decided to put it off until the governor came up with his final decision, which meant they'll probably be behind the 8 ball. And we'll continue to be engaged in the community as best we can, and looking forward to the future meetings. Thank you.
Very thorough. Thank you. Mr. Retterman.
Just one thing, the Aqua meeting is the first week, or the Aqua conference, first week in May 5th through 8th. I'll be attending educational sessions, and we're looking forward to that. That's all I got today.
Director Davidson.
I'll be thorough also. I have nothing to report.
Really?
That was easy.
Well, I'll take up some of your time then, maybe.
I met you over at Cliff's.
What's that?
I met you at Cliff's.
Oh, yeah, well.
Metal dinners. I've had some, but they're all in Nashville.
I've got,
Not speak to them.
excuse me, sorry. Got a number of items to report on. Been attending Amador Water Agency meetings on a regular basis. I mentioned before that 2 meetings ago, they agreed to a dropped surcharge to their customers. Also, I believe their history of conservation based on 2014 was 11%. So they've got a whole ways to go in relationship to meeting a 20 or a 25% or more conservation requirement on that. Ccwd, I've been attending their meetings. I believe they were at 25 or greater, depending upon how they looked at their numbers as far as the percent conservation. So they seem to be doing okay, especially the low number of customers that they have on that. So they feel as though they're pretty comfortable in meeting any demands on that. Attended a Board of Supervisors meeting, as Director Mills had mentioned. Was at the T-Stand IRWM last week. We do have one question that I'd like to bring up, and I think that it obviously has a financial impact, or not necessarily impact, but a financial consideration, and that is that group seems to get a lot of stuff done. They brought many millions and millions of dollars in. It's a very diverse group, including union. There, Ellen, I see you there, your staff every now and then, or I think you were there last. Yeah. Anyway, so it's a significant regional effort, and to date we are only on the advisory committee part of that. We have not, quote unquote, ponied up the money to become a JPA member, to have more significant opportunities to vote and do those other things. So I'd like to bring that up as an agenda item in the future. If we could, to discuss where we want to go with that particular IRWM and specifically our membership as a JPA. I know that there's been discussion even in-house as to the I don't know if animosity is the right term, but a little bit of friction, the fact that we haven't decided to make that step up in there. So we can discuss that as a board and yeah, go from there. We do have, which is a very unique opportunity, the community of Sheep Ranch, which currently has, I call it a cease and desist order, but currently has a limitation on any additional hookups or whatnot. They reached out to us and invited us to participate in their community potluck event, which is Friday evening, 7 o'clock in Sheep Ranch. And so working with the GM and other staff, we were able to put together a team that will go up there and present information to the Sheep Ranch community as it relates to CCWD's past, current, and potentially future management of water resources in that area, in particular the San Antonio Creek. So that'll be coming up this Friday, like I say, at 7 p.m. up at Sheep Ranch. And it's just nice, in my opinion, to have a community that not only asks for information, but there's a number, what, there's 7, 8, 9 questions. Can you please address this, and this in your presentation? And I thought that was really great. So we'll be up there this week. One of the things, too, we did have, and I hadn't mentioned that, I don't think anyway, in this kind of arena, but the liability that we have on our properties in relationship to public access, the facility that we have there in West Point, the motorcyclists, off-road folks come in and use that facility We had a significant accident where a fellow was life-lighted out of there in a motorcycle accident from our property. And I think that because of that, there's obviously liabilities that we incur. And I've asked that we have signage and potential gates and things like that take place up there. And I haven't seen that happen yet. So I'm hoping that in the very near future, we'll see some, no trespassing signs, or at least be able to take the property to a level where the sheriff might be able to come in and really curtail some of those illegal or at least unadvised activities that go on out there, in particular with trespass. And that was brought to my attention by another group that rides horses, public access in there, that had been and hike on that property or walk through it, and felt as though the motorcycle activities had really gone beyond a real, a courteous and productive manner, and that they felt that the motorcycle efforts was really disturbing, and they felt unsafe at times by being on that property. So anyway, that's kind of where we are with that property, and I don't know if that's a problem in other areas of the county on other properties that we have, but I'm sure that at some point in the history, you guys have dealt with liability of public access and things like that. So that's a relatively new issue. The gentleman the young kid is doing okay. He goes to school with my kids. And the recovery is going to be fine, but it was a very significant accident. I also had, as I mentioned earlier, a resident, a homeowner. She has a number of properties, and historically, as a customer, has been vocal at times. They ended up having a leaky water system. Well, actually, step back. We ended up replacing a meter on their system because the meter appeared to have faulty readings, and then we put a new meter on, and we found that there appears to be a water leakage between our meter and the home. And so, just as you were talking about, Jeff, the issue of watching the meter spin and all, I ended up going out and getting involved with that because I felt it was the right thing to do, and to my understanding, at least when we identified the fact that there is water leaking the system between our meter and her home, and that it's the responsibility of the homeowner then to replace that. We haven't heard anything from her since. So that's good. I'll be at the Aqua meeting, or the conference as well, coming up. And then two other things. Again, I can't overemphasize that we need as a district to prepare ourselves for grant monies coming up as it relates to the conservation and water reliability. And in my mind, seeing what happened up in West Point when we redid half the infrastructure up there, maybe one of our biggest water conservation techniques that we could do is replace the old and aged infrastructures we're doing on Reach 3A. But only really identify all the systems that we have that are dated and we suspect water leakage issues, and then go after those monies that might be available to fix that, regardless of whether it's a disadvantaged, rural, whatever type of community. So, thank you.
You can have the state get asked for no wetlands.
Yeah, really. Okay, so that's
Next board meetings.
the next board meeting coming up. We'll have two in May on the 13th and the 27th, regular board meeting. And with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting into closed.
Announce the closed session items, and then you ask candidates if they want to comment before we go.
Thank you. Let me announce the closed session items then. And 9A is conference with legal counsel, potential litigation, government code 54956.9. We have two cases there. Item 9B, conference with real property negotiators, government code 54956.8, property APN 048-003-190. Address may or may not be correct, off South Comanche Parkway in Burson. It's under negotiation, the price, terms of payment. Negotiating parties, David Egerton and Larry Diamond. Any questions now?
You can ask for people who can
Are there any public comments on those items before we move to closed session? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and move to closed session. Thank you.
Get your gavel.
Wow, learn a lot. Okay, let's go ahead and, meeting adjourned. Thank you for coming.